Welcome to the Bothell City Council regular meeting of September 3rd, 2019. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, all council members are here except Councilmember Olson, who missed his bus, so he'll be here. Meeting agenda approval. Is there any changes to tonight's meeting agenda? Councilmember Zorns?
I'd like to briefly pull AB 19-133.
Okay. Any other changes? Seeing none. Public engagement opportunities. Ooh, lots of stuff. Community Shred Fest, Saturday, September 14th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Evergreen Church parking lot. Bring up to 2 file boxes of 3 paper bags for shredding. We will also be accepting canned goods for donations to local food banks. The next is the pop-up dog park at the Park of Bothell Landing continues through Sunday, September 15th, culminating in a costume pet party from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Next is the Fall Natural Yard Care Workshop, September 18th, 25th, and 28th at the Bothell Operations Center. Topics include yard design, native plant selection, pest control, plant maintenance, and do-it-yourself rain barrel building session. And the last is the artist Kathleen McCarty's pieces are on display now through October 25th at City Hall. Okay, moving on. The special presentations, the first one is the swearing-in ceremony for Chief Seuberlich. Yes. City Manager, you have the floor.
It is my privilege this evening to swear you in as our new Chief of Police. I think I'm as excited and nervous as you are. This is a real honor. Thank you for asking. I state your name.
I, Ken Seuberlich,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
perform the duties of Chief of Police for the City of Bothell
perform the duties of Chief of Police for the City of Bothell
as prescribed by law
as prescribed by law
and to the best of my ability.
and to the best of my ability.
I will support and maintain the Bothell Police Department Code of Ethics,
I will
support and maintain
support and maintain
the Bothell Police Department
the
Code
Bothell
of
Police Department
Ethics and uphold the ordinances
and uphold the ordinances
of the City of Bothell,
of the City of Bothell,
the Constitution and laws of Washington State,
the Constitution and laws of Washington State,
and the Constitution and laws of the United States of America.
and the Constitution and laws of the United States of America.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Well, I tried to prepare a little something here, but managed to leave my reading glasses back on my desk, so I'll do my best. I guess I would like to thank the city manager for having faith in me, and I'd like to thank the mayor, deputy mayor, and city council for also having faith in me to do this job. I don't take that lightly. There are a number of people I would also like to thank in the audience. Got a lot of family members here, a lot of people from the PD, but I'll start with my lovely wife, Alice, my oldest boy, Tyler, Maxwell, Dexter, Alex, my mother, my father, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and my oldest son's fiance, Kayla, down there in the end. Thank you for all being here. It means the world to me. You know, if I could sum up everything, it would just, into one word, it would just be gratitude. I'm extremely grateful to have the opportunity to serve the city of Bothell in this capacity. I don't take it lightly. I had no idea 29 years ago when I started doing this is where I'd end up. But I just wanted to be a police officer and do police work. So it's been an amazing journey. I'm grateful to have such an amazing and understanding wife that tolerates my work schedule and the job itself. I'm grateful to have such amazing boys that make me proud every day. I'm grateful for my mom and dad that taught me the importance of a sound work ethic and to have good core values, and those things will take you places. I'm grateful to have had an amazing mentor in Carol Cummings for the past 8 years. Best chief I've ever worked for. I'm grateful to the men and women of the Bothell Police Department. They make my life easy, make me proud. Thanks for being here. Thanks for everything you do day in and day out. And lastly, and he's not here, my Uncle Dwayne, who 45 years ago convinced me to be a police officer at the ripe age of 7. Cool police car, Sam Brown leather. It was amazing, and it's like, oh, I got to do that for a living. And didn't see him for a number of years. Had a chance to touch base with him and tell him about my recent promotions, and learned a little bit more about him. And I had no idea, but his stepdad was Pop Keeney, which is kind of a weird circle, coming back to Bothell and doing the police chief gig here. So life has a weird way of working out, I guess. But in closing, I don't take this position lightly, and I will absolutely do my best to serve you and the citizens and members of Bothell. Thank you.
Mayor, if we could take a few minutes, if you'd like to maybe take some photos and...
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's do that. Should we recess? Recommend recess, break? Okay. Then everybody can clear out here for the rest of the meeting unless you want to stay. All right, so we'll take a recess. We'll be back on at 6:20 p.m. All right, we're back from break. We're moving on to another special presentation, King County Metro North Link Connections Mobility Project with Sherman Gong. Oh, there you are.
All right, thank you very much, council members. Appreciate you guys tonight. Well, who we have with me is Dave Vanderzee, project manager for Metro on the Northlink Connections Mobility Project, and with him is Maha Jashan, and she is the community engagement planner. What the Northlink Connections Mobility Project is something that the Metro is working on to make connections to the extended link project more tied together, similar to what we worked on the Northeast Side Mobility Project last year. So with that, I'll just introduce Dave here.
Thanks. Well, thanks again for having us tonight. We'll run through this presentation pretty quickly just because we want to make sure we save enough time for some questions and comments at the end. So again, my name's Dave Vanderzee. I'm the project manager from Service Planning at King County Metro. And let's see, make sure. Just, again, kind of talking about what the Northlink Connections Mobility Project is. Essentially, this is a project similar to the Northeast Side Mobility Project that just wrapped up. This project is really connected to the opening of the 3 new light rail stations in Seattle, one at Roosevelt, one at U District, and the one at Northgate, all slated to open together in 2021. We also did a similar effort in 2016 with the opening of the Capitol Hill and UW stations. So this is a similar scale to that effort. If you were around for that in 2016, we're really kind of looking at this as the next phase of Metro and Sound Transit coordination with the integration of light rail and opening of the next extension in 2021. So we have a number of different partners, including the city of Bothell. So working with our local jurisdictions, including the UW, working with SDOT, as all 3 stations are within the city of Seattle. Certainly working with our partners at Sound Transit, both on the rail side, but also on the bus side of things, since they do have bus routes that are also in this study area that we're working closely in coordination with them on. And so just a little bit about what exactly we're trying to do with this restructure of the bus service. One way I like to think about it with these project goals is that this bottom goal here, deliver integrated service that responds to link expansion, meets customer needs, is sort of the what of what we're doing. The why of what we're doing is really that top one, improving mobility for historically underserved populations, centering on people of color. So really making sure that we're increasing mobility for folks who need it most in our study area. And then the how of what we're doing is that second bullet point, equitably informing, engaging, and empowering current and potential customers that are traveling in our project area. So a little bit about what the project area is, and then again, kind of tying it back to light rail integration. There will be 3 new stations that will be opening in 2021, and this is really one piece of, multiple extensions, of course, that will be happening over the next several years. But looking at the 3, in particular, the 3 stations in North Seattle at Northgate, Roosevelt, and U District, with a peak frequency of every 6 minutes, really cutting down travel times to downtown, looking at travel times of approximately 7 minutes between Northgate and UW, and then another 8 minutes or so from the U District to Westlake and downtown Seattle. So really looking at this as a big sort of transit asset that's coming online, and so really thinking about how does the whole network of metro routes really integrate and really take advantage of this high capacity transit that will offer significantly improved travel times. So a little bit more about the project scope and what routes Metro is actually looking at changing. We're focused on, again, these communities in North King County, so Seattle, Shoreline, Kenmore, Lake Forest Park, and including Bothell. On the map here, The routes highlighted in red are the two routes in particular of our studies area that are affect Bothell in particular. It's the route 312 and 372 among 30 different routes, over 30 different routes that are a part of our project scope. One thing I also want to note that in that same corridor in SR 522 is Sound Transit Route 522. They are also planning a process in which they will be evaluating changes to Route 522. We're working very closely with them to make sure that as we develop changes that they are complementary with one another. So when we come back out in the fall for a joint round of outreach, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes, we'll be talking about both the metro routes in the corridor alongside Sound Transit. And additionally, we're looking at Community Connections project areas. So Community Connections is King County Metro's flexible services, so those non-fixed route options that Metro offers, looking at opportunities where we might provide those types of services and right size those to needs that we hear as part of the project. So again, looking at a pretty large area, again, similar in scale to the U-Link effort in 2016. So the other thing I'll note too, that we're also doing this using an equity impact review. So the King County has an equity impact review process that applies whether we're building a wastewater treatment plant or whether we're changing bus routes. In this case, we're not building a wastewater treatment plant, but we've adapted the equity impact review for transit-specific projects. And really, it's about by what process that we are engaging with community and evaluating and impacting decision making, and also looking at impacts for how we're actually changing service. When we look at how routes are actually going to affect folks that are within our study area, making sure that we put some metrics and measurement around that and making sure that our decision making reflects a wide range of vulnerable populations, underserved populations, and measuring how those folks are impacted as part of the result of our change. So I'm going to turn it over to Maha to talk a little bit about what our community engagement strategy looks like.
Thank you. So where we're at right now, we are just ending phase 1, starting phase 2. So phase 1 was where we started looking at community needs and what the priorities were. We think of our community engagement overview in different buckets, and that will apply to all the phases. So the first bucket is engaging with jurisdictions like yourself. We've been talking to technical staff, we've been going to meetings and letting folks know, here's what the project is about, what are we hearing from your communities. Second is we have interagencies connections. So we've been working with our counterparts at Sound Transit, Community Transit, Seattle Department of Transportation, WashDOT, and having conversations about where are points of intersection that we can meet. How do we bring forward our projects together? So when we're out in community, we're talking together as an interlinked. It's one network, even though we're different agencies and doing different work. Another thing we are doing is talking to our various partners like UW Seattle, UW Bothell, Seattle Children's, all the larger institutions, some of the businesses in the area who have a lot of their employees living up here like Amazon, Google, Boeing, and such, and talking to them about what their needs are. The other thing we're also doing is talking to different stakeholders. So going out and talking to community-based organizations like HopeLink, Iraqi Community Center of Washington, Literacy Source, and different folks who are serving different communities. We have an extensive list we will share with you and would love your feedback on as well. We just didn't have a chance to give you the copies ahead of time. We are also doing traditional engagement where we are putting together street teams. We're going out to events, to bus stops, talking to various folks in language if needed, and talking to them about what their needs are and what they're hoping to get out of these service changes. We also have an online portal where we've had over 300 comments or so far, and we'll be continuously updating this portal through every phase. We also have been talking to the operators. We've also created 2 boards. We have the mobility board, which is something we've done a little bit differently this time. We've recruited community leaders who live in all parts of our study area. They are from different communities. They are students. They are folks who are retired, folks with various access needs, whether it's language, whether it's disability services, whatever that happens to be. And we're talking to them and developing these concepts with them as well. We are putting together also a partner review board. The partner review board is a complement to what the mobility board is. It's made up of our partners, whether they're jurisdictions, the institutions we talked about earlier with the larger CBOs. And the idea is that we're checking in with them. So everything that we're doing, we're hearing back from folks, and we are incorporating that in the planning before we become public or we implement these changes. The last thing we're doing that's a little bit different also this time is we're partnering with 6 CBOs, and we're going to be contracting with them to do focus groups, specifically in their communities, knowing what their needs are, to hear more about those different needs that they're discussed with us, or whether it's issues, whether we've been hearing a lot about east-west connections, or if people are having issues with transfers, or if they are not feeling safe using the bus, or perhaps people don't know how to use the bus, and what are we doing as an agency and as partners to respond to these needs. So where we're at right now is, where is the, don't do technology well. Okay, so we're wrapping up phase 1 of the project. So we've collected and organized our input from all these stakeholders we've discussed with you. We're going to be using that information. We're giving it to our service planning team to develop these concepts for the proposed changes, and we will be debuting phase 2. Phase 2 will probably start around October 16th or so. That week, we are working with Sound Transit to launch our phase with the same time that they're going to go out and speak with communities. So what's going to happen then is all those folks we talked to in phase 1, we're going to add another layer and be sure to talk to them again to hear back on what they think about the designs. We come out with the maps, we ask them for their feedback, and midway through towards the end of November, we'll take back that feedback and bring back another iteration of it, have folks give us a chance to share their feedback, incorporate any last-minute things we need to do, and then we'll kick off phase 3, which would be the final trade-off decisions. We'll be preparing the proposal with the hope that in the summer of 2020 and beyond, we'll be present in community, and we'll be presenting this package to County Council. So I'll bring it back to you if you have any questions for either of us.
Any questions from Councilmember Zorn, sorry.
Just, that's okay. I look at my kids and blank on their names too. So, I totally get it. Just a quick question, because you were saying that bus routes are being impacted, and 372 is one that gets used a lot at our house. Are those no longer going to be straight shots? Are those going to go to the train, and then people will have to get off, disembark, and then get on the train? Is that,
Well,
or the light rail? Am I understanding that correctly?
yeah, so one of the things that we're doing right now is developing some of those concepts. So based on some of the needs and priorities that we've been hearing this summer through our first round of engagement, we're looking at what some of those trade-offs are. So while we haven't settled on any specific concepts yet, those are the types of trade-offs and questions we'll be asking about. Does it make sense for folks to be connecting to light rail? Would that connection make sense either from a travel time perspective, and also understanding how people are paying their fare, knowing that even in any situation, if we're asking folks to make a transfer or to change their trip behavior, that there's also an education component with it as well. So the short answer to your question is we haven't made any specific proposals yet about whether we're going to be asking folks on the 312 to make a transfer. However, that could be one thing that we do consider and ask the public to weigh in on.
Yeah, because I know there's a fair number of people who use that as a direct shot. Right. And so asking them to get off and take their bikes off, or if they're mobility challenged, it's, it's going to be more than just a small inconvenience in the dead of winter.
Sure.
So had to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, that's definitely the type of questions we'll be asking and getting those kinds of reactions when we come out with some proposals. And as Maha mentioned, there'll be a lot of room for multiple iterations based on that feedback.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember McAuliffe.
Thank you. And let me ask you just high level, what do you see as community needs and priorities? High level, just what do you hear?
That's a good question. Do you want to take that, or do you want me to answer that?
Start, and I'll take the
A few different things. I mean, a lot of what we heard so far was just sort of broadly need for east-west connections. So Maha kind of alluded to that, I think, in her presentation, or her part of the presentation, that hearing a lot of needs for east-west service. There is a desire for folks who do want to connect to light rail, just given that there are buses that are stuck in traffic on I-5 today. So while we are trying to evaluate what routes would make sense to transfer to light rail, I mean, that is one thing that some folks are saying about kind of having that, ability to kind of bypass traffic on I-5, but knowing that it might make sense to still keep some direct service. So I think that's something that we're hearing about, folks just being interested in the sort of the light rail component. Some things that we're hearing that are not as much service related, but questions about wayfinding and what does the transfer environment look like. So again, if we are asking folks to make transfers, how are we making that transfer accessible, ensuring that folks know how to get from their bus stop to the light rail platform? Are we locating the bus stops conveniently, adjacent to light rail stations? So we definitely are just hearing a lot of questions about what the actual bus to rail transfer might look like. And so we're also working with our capital planning folks to make sure that not only is there a service component to this project, but there is also a capital component too, to improving bus stop locations and any kind of capital improvements that we also would want to have accompany any service changes.
And I would add to that, one of the, not just necessarily a priority, but there is a need, definitely we're hearing from community that they need to be involved in the process, whether they are understanding how that Metro is not just making decisions and just telling the people, here you go, figuring out, but involving them in the process, making sure they feel that their voices have been heard throughout it, incorporating what we can, and then figuring out what are the solutions, what are things we can move forward with, what are some things that might need larger problem solving, and then how do we then use this project as a way to stay connected with community, whether in Bothell and other cities, that we're doing these education opportunities, talking to them about how do you use bus services, how are you using transit, and what can we be doing as an agency to be better equipped to serve this region.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. So my question kind of leans towards both the North Link and also the Bellevue Link. And just kind of understanding travel patterns, and as we continue to grow on the north end of our community, what's that going to look like? So when we talk about additional services going east-west, what are those travel times going to look like if somebody wants to take a bus, added bus service from downtown Bothell to 145th, catch Link and go to Seattle, versus getting on BRT 405 and heading into Bellevue? And where are they going? Are they going to Bellevue? Are they going to Seattle? So would it be faster for somebody to go to Bellevue than to Seattle? Or would it be faster for someone to go to 145th? And I choose the 145th because the things that I've heard over and over again repeatedly is 145th is going to be a bottleneck. There's no way to expand it. So I'm just curious if there's conversations going on around that.
Yeah, there's a couple things I would say to that. One is that with this project in particular, excuse me, we're looking as far as this as being kind of one piece of a sequence of future projects. So right now we're focused on 2021 with the extension to Northgate. However, we know in 2024 we have the 522 BRT that would come online. We have the extension opening at 145th. We have 405 BRT. So knowing that what we do right now in this 2021 kind of time frame has to be forward compatible with what's going on in 2024, and that we'll be kind of in these similar types of processes as we lead to those projects. What I would say right now, as we are looking at what those travel times are, as far as what's the travel time benefit that Link would provide, also knowing that, identifying what those bottlenecks are now and thinking about decisions that we make in 2021, we don't want to have to go back and undo in 2024. So when 145th station does open, when 522 BRT does open, we're not creating changes now that all of a sudden we have to totally reinvent the network for those 2024 projects when they come online. As far as your question specifically about what folks' travel patterns are, I think certainly one big decision is going, that influences people's choices is what that travel time is. And so people, I think, to some extent are going to vote with their feet in terms of choosing that quicker route. And that's one of the things that's one of the types of things we try to tease out in these engagement processes of what are those priorities? Is that travel time a priority, and or is that sort of route directness a priority? And looking at how we weigh the types of choices we make based on that feedback. But from a technical sense, we're certainly looking at what those travel times, those predicted travel times would look like to help inform our decision making as well.
And is there a place where we could find that information on those travel times? Is there like a website or something that could?
We can look at how we can get that information. We don't have it on our website, but we'll look at how we can get the analyses that are looking at those different travel times. So I know we have some tables put together about what the projected travel times are for the various Link and BRT projects. So
Yeah, I think it might be useful for folks in the community, even ourselves, to be able to look at what that looks like as a snapshot as we're going through time, right? So today it looks one way, tomorrow it looks next year, and then following year subsequent. So it'd be nice to be able to see how the ebb and flow is. So thank you for your presentation.
sure, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thanks for the presentation. I had a question in regards to planning ahead for BRT. You may know that the 522-405 connection is happening at the 405, but there is no parking currently planned for that location. And I'm curious, I had heard that Metro was not planning to have a stop there, any of the buses that travel 522. And I'm just curious if that's true, and if so, why would we make that decision? Because if there is no parking, then surely we need some way to get people to that connection so that they can get on the 405 BRT or the 522, depending on where they're coming from.
Sure. I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. We do have, what I can do is get that information. Brian Masick from our Transit Route Facilities Group is managing the bus stop improvements and coordinating with Sound Transit. So we can definitely come back with that information, and if there isn't or is a stop there, sort of what that rationale is. But I don't have that with me, but we can definitely get you that information.
That'd be great. If it's the case that you're not connecting to the 405 BRT, I would beg you to reconsider. When there's no parking, I don't know how else people will access that other than simply the 522 BRT. And it seems that if we want it to be a fully functioning, really well-ridden system, we need to connect to it. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the City Manager's Council Committee reports, and we have one item on here, King County Charter Review Regional Committee Consolidation Proposal, and that would be Councilmember McNeil's item that we want to make sure you brought up.
Thank you. So I do not have my notes on this topic today, but I can give you a brief update on what the charter has been discussing in the Regional Policy Committee, and that is they're talking about combining regional committees, and the conversation from SCA is, several member cities from SCA is what will that look like and what will that do for our voice. So the information that's coming out is it's not final yet on how it's going to look. But from a city standpoint, the city of Bothell, what do we think about combining those committees and what that will do for our voice in those committees? So as an example, Regional Policy Committee would be combined, and we would potentially not have a seat on that. Regional Transportation Committees, what is our take? Do we want to continue to have a seat at those tables on those regional policies? With the SCA, we all know that they do by area, so it's north, south, south end, so north end, and then they have like, cities down in south end, like Pacific and stuff like that. So I want to get some feedback on it so that I can take it back to the SCA PIC and make sure that during our regional policy committee updates that I can give our position from a Bothell standpoint.
Should we do that now, or do you want to do conversations?
We could do that at conversations.
Okay. Is there any other committee reports? Councilmember McAuliffe? God, I'm having a hard time with people's names. Off for too long.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just wanted to update you on my work with the, on the Youth Council. So right now I have a report from Matthew McCalmond, is that right? Yes. Who did the research on Youth Council options and next steps. So as you might know, and some of you have attended some meetings with me, with the youth that have wanted to have a youth council in Bothell. And their need is to have a voice in their city and their community. Right now in Bothell, we kind of have a little bit of a gap for our young people. They don't have input into their different activities that we have in town. They don't have input into some of the park and recreation opportunities, so they want a voice. Plus, it gives them the opportunity to grow and understand city government and to participate. So I have a report from Matthew, and it says Youth Council options and next steps. I will be bringing this forward in January, but I'm happy to share this with anyone that would like to, because I've had a group of young people that have asked over and over again for us to look into a Bothell Youth Council. And so I wanted to just report that I thank our city manager and Kelly, our assistant city manager, also for bringing this forward for me. Thank you.
So we can discuss that at council conversations. So just to remind the council members, the committee reports are about committees that you have been assigned to represent the city council. So if there are stuff like that, it's a good example of council conversation items. That's why we add that to the
Did I
agenda.
put it in the wrong place?
Yeah, the council conversations, it comes later. That's
Okay,
after.
well, let's put it in the council conversation.
Okay, but that's when we can have a conversation about it and stuff. So.
Totally. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah. Committee reports. Does anybody have a committee? Most committees didn't meet.
Yeah.
So we should be okay, right? All right. City manager, you're good? All right. Visitor comment. Oh, not prepared. Okay. Oh, that's not the one. Each person addressing the council will give his or her name in an audible tone of voice for the record, and unless the council grants further time, shall limit the address to 3 minutes. No person other than the council and the person having the floor will be permitted to enter into any discussion either directly or through a member of the council without the permission of the mayor. And the first sign-up sheet is Evan Huang.
Mayor, council members, thank you for listening. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Element Bothell Townhome project proposed by Joshua Freed, and more specifically, the recent determination of non-significance for the SEPA. I feel that this project, it's been proposed a few times, and it's definitely had major flaws in each one. Me and my neighbors will be speaking on some of these that we deem important. For me personally, the most important is the Department of Commerce determines landslide risk areas, and the project has identified several in one of the sheets early on in an early revision of the project, and since then basically has completely ignored them, basically proceeding to build homes right through them in an area that in early plans they had completely ignored to put homes in, like they intentionally avoided putting homes there. This is on a pretty steep and pretty soft hill, and they've already cut into this hill for the public storage unit, a 38-foot cut at the largest point, and then all the way down to 28. But yes, I think this project is going to cause potential risk given all the cuts into this hill. And that's my concern. There are going to be other points, but if you have any points about the hill and that, you have to ask them to me, correct? Or should we come up one by one? I'm very
So that's okay. So what we try not to do is have the council engage the public or
I see.
because
So I just-
there's been bad things that's happened in the past. So we try to make everybody behave where you can basically say anything you want to us, but I don't allow them to speak to you.
Oh,
We only get 3 minutes though, so you can do whatever you want for 3 minutes, and then, but we won't engage in a conversation with you during visitor comments.
I see. Thank you. Well, again, then my major point of concern would be that Department of Commerce identified landslide risk area and its impact on these houses that are going to be built beneath it effectively and above it. Yes.
Okay,
All right.
thank you. People are also welcome to email us and to call us too. All our phone numbers are online. Just type in Bothell City Council, it's all there. Next is Judy Meng.
Hi, I'm also a member, a neighbor. I'm really concerned about this project. This is, since I've lived there 30 years, this is the third time that we've seen the same two signs are still up along the highway, the roadway, for proposed land use projects. The old ones haven't been taken down. I didn't even see the new one. So then we got this envelope, this is it, saying that we only had a short time to petition to stop this. And I work with my brother, who is an engineer, and he called me because he had seen the proposal and is horrified that the testing, the fact that they want to remove 80% of the trees, they have not shown any proof of walls that they're going to develop. And there's a lot of people going to live there, and there's people on the top that are going to live there, and I don't want this to be Bothell's version of Ozo. And that's Oso, sorry, excuse me. That's basically what I'm concerned about. So I want everyone to know that this is happening and that the project manager is questionable. It took me 2 seconds to check that on my cell phone. So I think we all need to be looking at that and making sure that everybody's safe in Bothell, because we're going to be screaming if they aren't. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Stu Huggins. Is that right? You can correct me if I say your name wrong. I feel bad about that.
So I am Stu Huggins. I'm also 32-year resident of Bothell, and I'm speaking to the fact that we've appealed this same project, this development, and the notice that we received was that the SEPA, or State Environmental Policy Act, has determined it's not significant. There's no reason to do further studies to determine that there's anything wrong with this proposal. I want to speak specifically about one thing that the developer has noted, that there's a stream identified as being a part of the land that will be encompassed by the project. It's on adjacent to the property, but it's included in it, and there's no plan that's accurately reflecting the protection of the stream. There's not buffers that have been created to set the stream aside to protect it from any damage from the development itself, because the development is so large. It's a little over 3 acres. There's going to be 59 townhomes there, and there's not going to be the adequate buffer. It's been reduced in their plans to only 20 feet, and it's required to be much closer to 50 feet. And that's my point, is that the stream is going to fall into well, it's going to fall into a hazardous situation where it'll probably be compromised, and the wetlands that it serves or feeds to will also feel that. So we're just speaking about the various points that we made, that we've already appealed, sent an appeal. These are just minor, not minor points, the most significant points, but it's only a portion of our appeal. We can supply you with the documents that we've already presented and the further evidence and research that we'll do if you'd like. But we all feel as though this determination of non-significance is in error, and we'd like to see it modified. And we're perfectly willing to discuss the possibilities that we think are reasonable for the development itself. So, thank you.
Thank you. City Manager, we have a few of these on here. Do you have a business card you can maybe give them for next steps?
I do. I've already reached out to this group this morning, and so
okay.
They have my email address and are welcome to contact me at any time. But I do have some cards as well.
Okay. Next is Al Fagenbaum.
Welcome back. Good to see you all. My name is Al Fagenbaum, for the record. I wanted to give you a report on the Green Acres Park community meeting with the county assessor and our state legislators with regarding to the latest assessments of property values in the area. There was just about a revolution going on, because everybody was very, very upset with their assessments that they received from the assessor. They were all over the place. Some of them have doubled from last year. Mine went up almost 30% on my home. And the park manager Wayne Nielsen, appealed his assessment from last year, where they raised his assessment by $10 million. And four of us went up to the hearing before the Board of Equalization for his appeal. And it's as if you, I don't know whether you're familiar with the process, but it's like a court thing. You have the assessor is there who assessed the property, and the owner of the land is there, and they both present their cases to the Board of Equalization. And the four of us went up as just to provide moral support for Wayne, our park owner. And we sat there and listened to what went on. And one of the things that happened was the assessor suggested to the owner of the park that he's not charging enough rent. Now, this is a park for affordable housing for senior citizens, the overwhelming majority of whom are living on Social Security. I've met several women up there, single women in their 80s and 90s who are still working because they have to. And yet the assessor's saying, well, if you raise the rent, he didn't say it in these words, but he implied that if he raised the rent, he wouldn't have to worry about the additional $315,000 in taxes he was assessed last year, plus what he's being assessed, another $2 million valuation this year. I thought that was, I wanted to smack the guy. I mean, we are living on Social Security. He says, raise the rent. You're not charging enough rent. All the other parks charge more. So we formed a community meeting. We got standing room only in the clubhouse. Davina was there. Our other state legislators were there. The assessor was there. And the assessor explained the processes, and people asked questions and made comments. And so it was a very, very good, productive meeting. I proposed new legislation for our 3 state representatives to take back to the legislature and give them some consideration. The lobbyist for the Manufactured Homeowners Association was there, and she told me by email today that she wanted to send my proposed legislation statewide to all the assessors and the departments of commerce. I don't know whether she will or not, but I don't really care. I just want to see results. But one of the things I wanted to say to you people is I left each one of you a notice that I had written about the meeting we were going to have, well before the meeting. Not one of you, as far as I can tell, showed up. No, we know that you have nothing to do with assessments, but you could have learned something about how the people feel and about the way the county assessment program is going on, and the fact that you people talk about affordable housing all the time, yet none of you bothered to show up to the meeting to maybe learn how the residents up there feel about how they're being treated. We thought you people would be wanting to look out for us a little bit, maybe say a few words on our behalf to the legislators or to the assessor, but no one was there, and we were kind of disappointed in that. So I'm sorry that none of you showed up, but...
Could you wrap up your comments, please?
Yeah, I'm just giving you the report of the meeting. It was a very successful meeting, but until we have results from the legislature, it was basically just an afternoon spent in the clubhouse. So thank you for not showing up, but you should have been there. Somebody should have from the city council. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Megan Adams.
Is there a timer somewhere, or do I just have to guess what time it is?
There's little lights, so this one,
Oh, okay.
that's 3 minutes, this is 30 seconds, and that then beeps at you when it's
Perfect.
over.
30 seconds. Okay. I won't be very long. My name is Megan Adams. I'm with Imagine Housing. This is regarding Parcel A. I'm the real estate development manager, and we've been working very diligently on Parcel A for the last few weeks. We are set to apply for public funding September 10th to King County, September 12th to ARCH, a regional coalition for housing, and September 18th for Washington State Department of Commerce funding. And collectively, the public funders will fill a large part of the equity needed to create the project. So this is a proposed 54-unit, affordable, permanently affordable project near the river. It's 55 plus, we call it seniors, and it'll be all of the units restricted to under 60% of area median income, and we have a mix of 30%, 40%, 50% within that. My colleague Alan Dotterman would have been here tonight, but he's the mayor of Newcastle, and he had his own city council meeting to attend to. I just need you to know that Imagine is absolutely committed to executing the PSA by September 30th. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jeff Erickson.
Good evening. I am with the rest of the group that was talking about the townhome development. I think what you're hearing from my neighbors and I, so we're fairly long-term residents, we've made families here, we've got community here, and obviously with a very big shift to that natural community, there's always resistance. And so I think the thing that I want you all to take away is the attention we're looking for to detail. We talked about the slope a little bit. My house directly borders the property. My house resides right at the top of the slope, right below where they're talking about putting this in now. When I hear things like landslide hazard zone and cutting into the hillside and walls, and what I'm looking for is safety. Safety for my family, to make sure we're not going to have any sort of oversight around the engineering of the wall, as well as for traffic. Obviously, it's going to be an impact on the community. Just making sure that we are being realistic about how in a community of single-family homes where the greater area is on the order of maybe 150 houses to add 60 residences there, and the true impact to the nearby community. So as we think through these things, and as a community we've discussed and we've seen the signs, and obviously Bothell is growing, that is no doubt. But as we think about our immediate community, just making sure that safety is preserved, both from a structural standpoint, from a pedestrian and driver standpoint on the roads, just as we continue to live our lives and build our community here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Paul Cowles.
Paul Cowles, 14124 Northeast 181st Place in Woodville, Washington. I'm here to talk to you about Yakima Food Market. I was lucky enough to have lived in Bothell for 30 years and banked most of the community for 25 years. We have a rogue agency, yes, that's Sound Transit, that basically is showing us bluff and filibuster and moving right ahead. They want to take Yakima fruit away from it. At this point in time, it doesn't make sense for them to take this property. There's no parking between the Bothell park and ride and where they could actually load somebody on this the Sound Transit dedicated bus lanes. And right now, the bus lane starts 350 feet south of Yakima fruit. At this point, you're throwing away something that is intangible in the small community, and it's a community business that has done wonders for this community over the past 60 years. There are countless Bothell high school students that got their first job down there. That still happens today. They provide affordable and good fruits and vegetables to this community. They have paid taxes through the nose for 60 years. Please, in God's name, draw a strand and stand with your citizen down there that's getting hosed by the rogue agency. They do not need their property because it doesn't link up with the park and ride. They're not going to get a transit-only lane on 101st Avenue Bridge. They're not going to move the supports to widen that. They just won't do that. It is by far and away one of the most crazy things in the world. When we voted for, and I did not vote for Sound Transit 3, nobody knew how much it was going to cost them. It's $18,000 for every man, woman, and child in the benefit area. It will be on there forever, on in perpetuity. I tell you, I was a conservative guy on the council when I was here. They've turned me into a tree hugger, for God's sakes. 5,000 trees to go to Linwood. That is ridiculous. If you go down there, particularly on 5th Avenue Northeast, and see the number of houses that they've bought and torn down, this agency is out of control. Please support your citizen that's in the fight for his life, for his business, and his livelihood. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the end of the sign-up sheets. Does anybody else want to provide public comment? See, going once, going twice. Okay. So we are on to the consent agenda. One item has been pulled. That was AB 19-133. Is there a motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Councilmember Agnew. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, place your vote. Passes unanimously. And AB 19-133, contract with Gordon Thomas Honeywell Governmental Affairs for State Government Relations Services from October 2019 through September 2020. Councilmember Zorns, you pulled it?
Yeah, just a quick comment, because I know that we have covered, what is that? Gordon Thomas Honeywell, GTH, doesn't quite roll off this old tongue. We have covered how they have really served the city of Bothell well on their first year with us. And I would just like for us, instead of just letting it getting buried in the consent and moving on, for us to just review again what we gained in the last year from them helping us with Olympia. So what we had, almost $300 million that directly benefited Bothell? Is that right? My numbers, people?
Depends on if you're counting the 405. 405 was 640 million. But I think it was 2.something million just for 2.9 million just for Bothell projects within Bothell alone.
So my math is really poor right now because I don't have my calculator out. What we paid them versus the return is what? It's big. So I just really appreciate how they served us in the past year, and I would like to give them another nod to advocating for us.
All right. Would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that we approve AB 19-133, contract with Gordon Thomas Honeywell Governmental Affairs for State Government Relations Services from this October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2020.
Second.
It's moved by Councilmember Zorn, second by Councilmember Agnew to approve AB 19-133, contract with Gordon GTH, Governmental Affairs for State Governmental Relations Services for the coming year. Any further discussion on the motion? No? Nobody else? All right. Go ahead, place your vote. That passes unanimously, and we are now into the public hearing. AB 19-134, 2019 Housekeeping Code Amendments. And do I need to officially open a public hearing, or is it already open? Yeah, okay, I am officially opening the public hearing for the 2019 Housekeeping Code Amendments. Mr. Blackburn, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Where is it? Ah, there it is. Thank you. Oh, doing a little technical stuff here. Excuse us. We do this. This is the 2019 Housekeeping Code Amendments. And Housekeeping Code Amendments tonight we're going to talk about is this, of course, a public hearing. You're going to receive a staff presentation. You're going to have some public testimony, council deliberations, and then a recommended action, which is to adopt the recommended 2019 Housekeeping Code Amendments in the proposed ordinance. Each year, provisions in the Bothell Municipal Code are identified that need clarification, do not meet their intended purpose, or need to improve permit efficiency. In 2019, the docket contains 8 of these amendments. Now, the Planning Commission has provided a recommendation on those 8 amendments to address the issues identified. 2 of the 8 policy amendments have some policy implications. The first of all is whether to apply the PUD or planned unit development clustering incentives to multifamily residential zones, and the second half of that is to establish a minimum area and dimension for open space areas that are created through the PUD clustering provisions. The second policy implementation provision you have is whether to amend procedures for plan and code amendments to, one, reflect current state law, review practices, and improve consultations between board and commissions. Now, just a little bit of quick background on this. This is, of course, a little bit of discussion about the clustering code provisions. And this is essentially a couple of illustrations that show you what we have been achieving in the past 2 years with the clustering provision. And the table to the right shows what we have been doing for the incentives, as well as the amount of open space that has been created through this. And we've got about 19 additional lots that have been incentivized through this bonus place. We've also got about 12.2 acres of open space preserved. So it has been a project that we have really embraced, the development community has embraced. One of the things that was really interesting about this is that 3 of the projects didn't even want to have the bonus incentive lots. They were only interested in the additional flexibility in the code to make greater open spaces, basically what they identified. And the little project to the top here really illustrates that. They were mostly interested in making the amount of area they had to develop much smaller. It made it a lot cheaper for them to build. And so that was an interesting aspect of this that we did not expect. Now, the Planning Commission recommendation is to extend the incentive to include multifamily residential zones, essentially so we can encourage greater amounts of open space preservation. Also, for the Planning Commission recommendation, the second half is to increase the amount of open space needed to attain incentive units. Basically, in multifamily zones, instead of a 15% amount of open space to be preserved, the multifamily zones would have to preserve 20%. Now, there's a couple of reasons for doing this from the Planning Commission. One is, of course, that multifamily zones have more flexibility. In other words, they have a little bit more ability to make their project comply with those provisions. The other is that a higher percentage reserves the potential for establishing other future incentives, such as affordable housing or something else we may identify as part of this plan unit amount. So that was the true reasons why the Commission is recommending a higher percentage requirement before you can achieve bonus units. Now, the other half of this, of course, is talking about the minimum area and dimension for open space areas, basically width, length, and those kind of things. For single-family residential cluster PUDs, the Planning Commission is recommending a minimum dimension and area that's equal to 50% of the underlying zoning's minimum lot circle and minimum lot area. Basically, what the intent of that is to make sure we don't have those really narrow strips of land that nobody can use. We want to have this to be really effective open space. And the other thing is that we are providing some bonus incentives for this. So we really want to achieve something really special in these locations. One of the things one of the reasons the Planning Commission picked this approach was that it kind of matches what you're going to have for the lot area and dimensions within that clustered subdivision. An example is a R9600 zone. You have a 9,600 standard lot dimension or area and dimension and an 80-foot dimension. And in this situation, because of the clustering provision, you can reduce it down to 50%. So the minimum open space area would be 4,800 square feet and a minimum dimension of 40 feet. So that basically gets you kind of like that scale of open space that you really want for your development. For residential, for multifamily residential clustered PUDs, the Commission is recommending an average dimension of 25 feet with a minimum dimension of 15 feet and a minimum area equal to the underlying zoning's per dwelling unit square footage. Now, as an example for that would be the R4000 zone, where you have the 4,000 square feet for every dwelling unit that you've provided. The Planning Commission believes that's a really equitable way, again, to connect those incentives to the amount of area and also to make the area so that it kind of fits with the scale of development. One of the things the Planning Commission is recommending as well is to consider a 2020 docket item. And that would to be use the PUD incentives processes to maybe do something for creation of affordable housing. The Planning Commission looked at this and said, you know, we want to keep that space available. We think this might be one of the more of those tools that we may have to have some incentives. Okay, well, you can get some more. If you a certain amount of affordable units you create, you could have some additional dwelling units. They think that would be a good thing for us to explore in 2020. The other policy consideration is whether to amend development procedures to reflect current practices and improve consultations between boards and commissions. One of the things about this one is that the Planning Commission wanted to improve and expand the consultation between advisory bodies. We have some really great advisory bodies. We want to make use of those advisory bodies as much as we can. We also want to be efficient with how we use those advisory bodies because there's such a thing as burnout. The Planning Commission needs to be the overall voice for the comprehensive plan because they are the only advisory body that reviews all plan elements and all sub-area plans. So basically what you have is you have 13 elements. There's kind of citywide elements within the comprehensive plan. Each of those elements really has to have some type of a commonality to them, some type of a common unifying voice. And the Planning Commission is really the best advisory body to provide that because they have such a wide range of review responsibilities. Now, in the code amendments, there's a couple of things that the Planning Commission is making sure that occurs. One is that the BMC regarding utilities, they think those would make a logical sense for those to go directly to the council with other types of code amendments, for example, things in Title 20, which is building, and some of the other things. They think that should go directly to the council because most of those are pretty minor code amendments. The other one is they want to make sure that too is that Title 13, which is Shoreline Master Program, and Title 22, which is Landmark Preservation, they are making no recommendations for any changes to those code. Those recommendations will continue to go directly to the City Council from either the Shorelines Board or the Landmark Reservation Board, respectively. Now, it's important that we recognize these amendments do not diminish the roles and responsibilities of any advisory body. In fact, it kind of emphasizes those. Advisory bodies will continue to make independent recommendations regarding elements of the comprehensive plan. And again, we kind of repeat this a little bit, but again, the Planning Commission is really the only advisory body that reviews all elements of the sub-area plans. And again, are the most logical body to ensure all elements and sub-area plans are internally consistent. That's a big deal under the Growth Management Act. One of the other things that we want to make sure the council recognizes is nothing in these code amendments that talk about the process affects any state mandated processes. So that's an important consideration. There's a number of amendments that don't involve policy implications. They basically do these housekeeping type of things. Certainly one is clarification on rounding up unit and lot yield. The plan and the code currently don't allow that, but there's a couple places where it made sense to add some additional language to emphasize that. The other is give applicants 180 days to resubmit for additional materials requested by the city instead of the current 90 days. One of the things that we're finding is that applicants are really struggling to get some of these really complex studies and analyses done within that 90-day time frame. It makes a lot of sense to give them that 180 days. One of the others is we had an incorrect reference in the code that was a leftover from 2015 that was not removed back then that talked about deduction of surface water facilities from net buildable area. We made that change. We just missed it in one section, so we want to basically take that out from there. One of the other things we want to do is we want to clarify the location of sub-districts within the North Creek Northeast 195th Street sub-area. One of the things that we've noticed is it's not very clear, so we're going to put a map in there because those maps work great. Another thing we want to do is that there's been some concern about clarification that we need to make sure that sign height includes the foundation or the base of the height. So basically you measure it from city-approved finished grade to the top of the site. That's how we do it. So we're going to make a couple little amendments of the code as well as insert a new illustration. One of the last things we have to worry about is defining detached condominium units. Now currently there is no definition, and it's important we do that because detached condominiums have a real different regulatory approach than single-family residential. And if you look at a detached condominium, it looks just like single-family. We want to make sure people who buy the projects, people in the staff, as well as applicants, understand that there is a difference in how we process these things and how they're procedurally applied, as well as give residents who may be acquiring one of these, well, I wonder what the code talks about with that, and so they can look that up and look that definition up. So I want to conclude my presentation. If you have any questions, and of course then we can go into public testimony, have council deliberations, and again, the recommended action is to adopt the recommended 2019 Housekeeping Code amendments and the proposed ordinance. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blackburn. We'd like to hear from the public, so we'll start with the sign-up sheet. There was one by the door if you wanted to say something, you're welcome to if you didn't miss the sign-up sheet. First is Ann Agard.
I need to turn on this light. So I don't know how to do it, and then I'll give you, to give to the council, the copies that I made. Thank you. Okay, if you'll give one to each of the council members, there's an extra one. Is it on? Okay. Let's see if this works. Now, do I need to punch a button, or is it on? There, thank you. My name is Ann Agard. I live at 16524 104th Avenue Northeast. I sent you an email over the weekend, which is basically identical to the one I'm handing out to you now. And I stated that the current language under Section H for the shoreline element in these housekeeping amendments is incorrect and cannot be implemented by the city as it is written. So I proposed the language in blue that is consistent with RCW 9058, the State Shoreline Management Act, and with the Department of Ecology guidelines, which the city must comply with, whether it is a shoreline master program or any segment, and I emphasize segment of the Bothell program. The elements that are included as the shoreline element are adopted through the shoreline master program process. So ecology has to review that segment of the goals and policies. Further, ecology states in their guidelines 173-26-191 that these any changes, particularly the policies, shall be developed through an open, comprehensive shoreline planning process. To date, the City of Bothell has not given the Planning Commission the authority to do a shoreline comprehensive planning process. You recently gave that authority to the Shoreline Board, and we carried it out on the periodic review. But no one has given that authority to the Planning Commission, and therefore they cannot review the goals and policies and make the recommendation to council. It has to be someone that has been given that authority. As I said, to date, it was the Shoreline Board, and unless you change it, that would be improper. Further, I point out that the shoreline, that the Planning Commission, the goal of one of these changes is that it avoids duplication. There is no duplication. The elements in the shoreline element are specifically prescribed under 9058 and the Department of Ecology guidelines. They list the elements that must be included in the Shoreline Master Program. This Planning Commission, or what the city does in their comprehensive plan, do not determine the elements that are discussed under the Shoreline Master Program. Those come from the state law and from the Department of Ecology. So my time is up. And I hope you will look and consider very strongly the language in blue that I propose to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Megan Adams. Was that on purpose? Because you're good? All right. You don't want to talk about this one? Okay. Does anybody else want to give public comment during the public hearing? Please go up and give your name for the record.
Hello, I'm Karsten Kurd, 19007 100th Avenue Northeast, Apartment 3. I serve as a commissioner in the Planning Commission, and I'm here to just comment on kind of what we had discussed in our deliberations on that previous agenda item. The Planning Commission is supposed to be presenting a coherent and a forward recommendation to you, to council. And we included deliberations, and we attended the deliberations on the Shorelines Board as well. And I think the whole point of boards and commissions is to hear from the citizens of Bothell, and it's also to make sure that people are communicating and there's transparency in the process too. I think that the Shorelines Board has made some really important decisions, and I really personally value their feedback and their expertise on the matters relating to the shorelines. And I think that if we were to divide up a lot of the different elements of the comprehensive plan towards each individual body, rather than putting it all through Planning Commission to you, it might be a little redundant. And if there was any differences or any question into transparency, that could be addressed as well. As the council, you attend the meetings and you can bring up these differences if they do occur. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none. All right. Council questions to Mr. Blackburn? Anybody? Councilmember Zorns? Or Mr. Catterman? He's hiding back there. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, long walk.
Mr. Blackburn, do you ever have a bad day?
No, very rarely.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you.
The concerns raised about taking away master planning for the Shoreline Board concerns me. And so my question to you, how has the planning department looked at the legality of this, because there's a lot of heavy lifting that can happen in the shoreline master plan.
Exactly.
And it can't be just, put into a little tiny one-page summary. How do we keep their work significant and in the forefront of master planning when it concerns shoreline?
Well, I think that one of the things we want to make aware of is that we still go through that full shoreline master program planning effort. This just talks about how we're going to coordinate the results of that effort with our rest of our comprehensive plan. So kind of like the big picture. Okay, let's put this into the big picture provisions. There's nothing that we're going to do that would say we won't follow some state law provision for master programs or land use element. I mean, one of the things that we need to remember is the Growth Management Act includes a lot of different aspects and elements that we have to do. We don't put that into how we get to there. We just make sure when we get there, we do have that correct answer. So, I mean, we are not concerned, and I can look at the city attorney, but we don't think we have any legal issue here at all. We are just talking about how we're going to derive a comprehensive plan that meets our overall goal and has a one single unified voice.
Well, I did see in what we were given, if I understood it right, that the results of the work from Shoreline would be attached with Planning Commission.
Absolutely, and it's one of the things we want to make sure we did is that any board or commission that provided a recommendation to the Planning Commission, their recommendation would be brought to the City Council in addition to the Planning Commission.
Unedited, straight from them.
Exactly, yeah. So the idea is that if there's some change that's made, and I'm trying to think of what it could be, and I can't really imagine what that would be, that maybe could be a concern of the board or the commission that is providing the recommendation. This council has it. They have it right in front of them. Hey, wait, there's a delta between this one and this one. Why is that purpose? And then as the council's the decision body, can say, oh, okay, now we see what the planning commission wanted to do, or we think that the board or commission had the better approach. So that's still up to the council.
Okay. At what point does Department of Ecology weigh in on our master plan?
Well, basically,
when it involves shoreline.
Yeah, essentially what we have is a master plan has a very distinct process it goes through. That's eventually we do a bunch of amendment process. We go to ecology. It's very similar to the comprehensive plan. In fact, the shoreline master program is a mandatory element of the comprehensive plan. So they're all jammed together. But basically the concept is that we still go through that amendment process as required by ecology, or we heard a little bit of information about Department of Commerce, the Washington State Department of Commerce. The Washington State Department of Commerce has a lot of rules in how we do comprehensive plan amendments. We follow all those rules. I mean, we don't have anything to say, well, we're not going to follow that rule for some reason. We make sure we comply with all those mandatory process provisions, including, of course, Shoreline Master Program stuff.
Okay.
Councilmember Zornes, will you yield the floor for just a second?
Sure.
Mr. Blackburn, will you clarify, correct me if I'm wrong, but the City Council approves a Shoreline Master Program and then ecology reviews it for consistency with state law?
Yes.
Okay, because that's what I heard you ask. Is that what you asked?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
No.
So,
I'm giving the floor back.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about the Bothell process, but you're right. Ecology does have ultimate approval authority of any shoreline master program that we were to send to them.
Okay. And I have some more questions. On page 37 of our agenda packet, I saw that shorelines, it's the transportation element. Planning Commission and then Shoreline Board is taken out if it was involved. It was just whittled down to Planning Commission makes recommendation to City Council, and they take the final action. Can you explain to me the reason why you took Shoreline Board out of that if you've got transportation that could be impacting shorelines?
Well, excuse me. The Shoreline Master Program has provisions about transportation facilities within the shoreline jurisdiction. And so the concept here is that anything we do in transportation element that is reviewed by the Planning Commission, again, has to be consistent with those provisions. Now, one of the things we're also trying to recognize, and we heard this from a couple of other boards, is that there's this concern that we're going to be doing all these meetings and having to provide all these recommendations. And one of the things we're trying to be as efficient as possible by concentrating the most appropriate elements on the people who have the best ability to do that review. And the transportation is Planning Commission. They have all the sub-area plan they review. They have all the elements they have to have. They are best in a position to do those transportation element type plan amendments. Sorry.
I got that impression, but the old language was only when shorelines were involved if I understood that right. Mm-hmm. And so we have a major highway that goes right by the slough here, right?
405, 522,
so
a lot of them.
In my mind, shoreline should be part of that. Where are they in the process of that conversation of how transportation impacts the shorelines?
Well, the Shoreline Board would be involved in when they craft the SMP regulations, and that's in Title 13. Those SMP regulations have a lot of provisions of how you will develop within shorelines. Any transportation project has to follow those provisions. So I guess the idea is that the Shoreline Board will be providing the regulations that any future transportation project has to comply with.
So you're saying that the master plan would be driving how transportation takes shape?
It is, because don't forget the connection to ecology, because ecology is really the ultimate authority when you're talking about shoreline master program provisions.
Right.
And so any improvement that has to go in there is going to certainly have to pass their muster.
Okay, thank you. And then on page, right, we're shifting gears. Thank you for your patience, council. On page 42, at the bottom of page, let me get to my, yes, on the bottom of page 42 and then the top of 43 for our clustering for, I think this is single, it says single family where you have, the comment is, in order, it is 3B, I'm looking at point 3B. In order to promote efficient use of land, no multifamily development shall contain fewer units that would result in the total number of units calculated. Could you clarify that for me?
In fact, that's a provision that the city of Bothell has to make sure we don't achieve really low densities in areas that we are anticipating having quite a bit of growth. And multifamily zones is a really classic of that. Our single-family zones have the same provision. It's 150% of a maximum lot area or unit count that you can't go over or above. It kind of depends on how you look at it. So in the 9600 zone for single-family, you can't have units based upon about 14,400 square feet. In multifamily, if you're talking about the 4,000 designation, you can't have units that are not based upon 6,000 square feet or smaller. It's a way to make sure the city achieves its growth targets, and that's really important.
Okay. So you're making sure the developer doesn't underdevelop?
Exactly, yes.
Okay. And then on page 44, I'm getting towards the bottom of my list here, section 7A, where there is non-single family PUD process attached dwelling units subject. I think I'm looking at the correct one, where you have two adjoining lots that have different regulations. Is that the, yes. And you're combining.
Is that subsection B?
It's
Oh, A? Oh, okay, yes.
So you're combining the number of units from both of those?
Yes.
So my question is, if there's different zoning on those two adjoining properties, do the setbacks remain in place of, say there's different setbacks or there's different building heights? Do those remain in place on those particular pieces of land, or does that get averaged out?
They would. If you're talking about building height, it does go by the underlying zone.
Okay.
Setbacks are the same way. However, single-family residential, all the setbacks are the same.
Right.
Building heights are the same, and very similar to a situation with our multifamily zones as well.
Okay. So, just say in theory you have a multifamily adjoining a single family and somebody that can have ADUs. You still respect that underlying zoning for residential, that if it was adjoining a multifamily, I'm just saying hypothetically, if you had a multifamily zone lot adjoining a single family lot, you still respect that underlying zoning?
Yes, we have to, and that's one of the provisions of the plan unit development. I don't think I actually have the section here, but it actually does say you will not exceed those numbers allowed by individual zoning categories.
Perfect. Okay. And then it's my last question. On page 47 of our agenda packet, on point KC, for clustered subdivisions may improve an increased number of lots beyond the number established by the lot. And is there a transfer of open space? Am I reading that correctly?
No,
You're allowing a transfer of open space?
Sort of. Basically what we're doing is that we're taking the entire net buildable area of a piece of property, and then you apply the underlying zone and minimum lot size, and you get a number. 20 or 30, whatever it happens to be. That's the maximum number of lots you're allowed on that clustered subdivision PUD. And then you do configuration of the lots to make it smaller to preserve the open space that we're trying to achieve.
Okay, all right. That's it. Thank you very much.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. I had the question surrounding the affordable housing incentives. You'd mentioned that that's in some of the plans, it's not really used that often, or?
Well, one of the things is that that's a new provision that the Planning Commission would like us to explore, to use PUD incentives that we have for open space to incentivize affordable housing. We don't do that currently. That's a code amendment we'll have to do sometime in, well, 2020 if the council so desires.
Okay, and has anybody looked at what other municipalities have done there? I'm asking that question for a reason, because I know Seattle has a lot of incentive programs, and I'm hearing that developers are not using those incentive programs at all.
Yeah, and it depends on which jurisdiction you're talking about, but there is a wide range of incentive programs out there. And they include things like open spaces, the city of Bothell does, affordable housing. Some even have special design things that if you include into the project, they will give you an incentive on that. It's interesting that you identify that some jurisdictions are not seeing some of those incentives, and we haven't done much analysis on that, but there's always a concern that you make the incentives so difficult to achieve that practically nobody can do it. And so that's a real balance you have to do when you do those type of analyses.
And does Redmond, do I understand that Redmond actually mandates that in some of their projects?
In some of their areas. Now, Redmond has a lot of different special sub-districts, similar to Bothell, but probably a little bit more intense. And they actually do have some mandatory provisions that have to be applied. And one of the things that's tough when you're comparing different jurisdictions, Redmond applies a lot of floor area ratios. And of course, that's something the council is going to hear a little bit more in the future. And they have a base and then an incentive and numbers of that type, depending upon which type of incentive the developer chooses. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways to implement those incentives.
Okay, and then one of the things I was reading about condominiums, understanding that, can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, indeed. One of the things that we have, in fact, the city of Bothell was one of the very first to have condominiums that are detached. In other words, it looks just like a single family. It's got 4 walls, a roof, and all those kind of things. And it's not on a fee simple lot. In other words, it's not a true subdivision. But basically what it does, it looks just like a subdivision. And so we want to make sure we have a definition in our code that describes what those items are. And it sounds kind of silly, but it's also important because we as a city have some certain regulatory aspects that we have to comply with if it's a condominium versus single family. So it's it's one of those boring but necessary kind of definitions that we have to have.
Fabulous. And so this is kind of some cleanup work that we're doing. Last question I have is, do we have any information on how Fitzgerald is doing in the Fitzgerald area?
Yeah, I was hoping I could take some time today and try and figure that out. I do not. We have received one project that received hearing examiner approval, Montevello. Yes, and so that one is still not in construction yet. But I know that one did receive hearing examiner approval. We also have one in the hopper, I guess you'd say it, in the process, where it is on the floor of the Fitzgerald area, in the R40,000 area, that is being reviewed now.
Do you know how many units those are?
I
put you on the spot.
Yeah, I think it's 12 to 16. Oh, no, too many? Oh, I don't know. Okay.
All right.
That makes me feel better. Yeah, it's not a huge number in the 40,000 area, but and Montevello was about 80-something, 84, 85, something like that.
Units?
Yes.
Okay. Housing units.
Single family houses.
Single family. Okay. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Deputy Mayor.
Hi, Bruce. Thanks for the presentation. I'm still trying to understand. Could you go through what the process is if revisions are made to Title 22? What does that look like? How does that work?
Well, basically what would happen is that we want to set it up so that Title 22 continues to be done by the Landmark Preservation Board and comes directly to council. The code provisions would not change. It's only because we have the overall need to have this comprehensive plan that has a kind of a unified vision and voice to it that we're having the Landmark Preservation Board make a recommendation to the City Council.
So it doesn't go through the Planning Commission?
Well, let me look that up. Hold on. I want to make sure I get this right. So Yes, on Title 22, the Landmark Preservation Board would consult with the Planning Commission. There may be something that they may want to get their input on, but it's a consultation process. For the, hold on, get to the right page.
And the same for Title 13 with the Shorelines Board.
It's exactly the same with the Title 13. Actually, the Title 13 goes directly to the City Council. They don't consult with the Planning Commission.
Okay.
We thought because of the unique nature of the Shoreline Master Program, it made more sense for those regulations to come directly to the council.
So that's how I remember it working with Title 22, but I'm wondering, when I read, it talks about for plan amendments or elements that involve regulated shorelines, parks, and open space or landmark preservation, those respective boards will craft a recommendation, which will then be forwarded to the Planning Commission for review and consideration, blah, blah, blah. So I'm trying to think of what other elements there might be that the Landmark Board would get involved with and how that process would look now, differently than it works currently. So off the top of my head, let's say we're talking about the special design review area. Is that in Title 22 or is that in a different element in the comp plan?
Actually, I think the special design area downtown is in the downtown suburban
Okay,
district.
so that would be a perfect example where the Landmark Board would be involved and provide a recommendation, and then it would go through the Planning Commission. Planning Commission may have a completely different take and recommendation, correct?
Well,
but that's how it currently works anyway.
Well, that's how it is currently now, yes.
Right, so I just am trying to wrap my head around, what are we actually doing here? How does it change?
Well, the change is the plan and the regulations. We have two documents we're working with here. The plan is the one that we want to have the Planning Commission make sure they have the ability to review and kind of get into this holistic approach. The regulations are a little bit different because the regulations apply the plan policies. And so we believe that those individual boards have more autonomy in that situation.
Okay.
Did that help? Maybe not.
Not so much. I guess what I'm trying to get at is if we were to change, what is your take on Ms. Agard's letter and on her crafted language, and how does it differ from what's proposed? Is there a significant difference?
Well, there's a difference, and Ms. Agard is really looking at the concept of this, the Shoreline Board, and I think that's an appropriate thing to do. We're trying to look at it more of a holistic kind of an approach, and that's one of the things that we get to do as planners is because, we look at, okay, the transportation element today and the urban design element tomorrow and the historic preservation department element next week. So it's more of a holistic look at this document. And that, again, it's the plan that we're wanting to make sure we do this on.
Okay, so if I understand it correctly, I am actually fine with this because I think it makes sense for the Planning Commission because of the depth of knowledge that they have and the detail at which they look at the entire comprehensive plan. To me, it makes sense that everything would go through them, and it's not as though those boards and commissions don't have their say and aren't given the opportunity to voice their opinions, and those opinions are forwarded to City Council.
Yes, indeed. That was an important element that the commission really wanted to make sure that occurred, is that if those boards and commissions, everybody had that recommendation.
It seems more comprehensive to me that the board that has the greater detailed knowledge of the overall system would weigh in and kind of be the collection point. So
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're back.
You're on to me. Okay, so I guess I'll start with that one just for fun. So Title 13 in the municipal code is shoreline management, and that's what the Shoreline Board has jurisdiction over. Well, we have ultimate jurisdiction, but they give us direct.
Right. Their primary responsibility is to provide the council recommendations on those amendments, yes.
And then same with Title 22, the municipal code, that's landmark preservation, so the same system there.
Yes. We would like the landmark preservation to consult with the Planning Commission in case you have a situation like downtown in a special district, but it is primarily the Landmark Preservation Board responsibility.
So the comprehensive plan isn't in the municipal code?
That's correct. It is not. It is I hate using the term umbrella document, but it is an umbrella document that guides many different aspects of the city.
So I just kind of want to point that out because it seemed like I don't know if all council understand that. There's municipal code and then the comprehensive plan. They're different things completely. So, okay, that's that. So and then you mentioned we're going to receive both recommendations for different items, like in the comprehensive plan. So we'll see what the Shoreline Board says and Landmark Preservation Board says. So did we get any feedback on this amendment by either bodies, like as a body, how they feel about these amendments?
Yeah, I went to the Parks and Recreation Board and went to the Shorelines Board, and anyway, there was no formal vote. I just was mostly a briefing. So I mean, I don't know if I could, it wouldn't be fair for me to say, well, this board thought this board thought, but I can go out a little bit on a limb, and the Parks Board was really happy to see that their involvement with the capital facilities element.
About the Landmark Preservation Board? That probably wasn't your deal?
Because of the timing of everything, I wasn't able to get to them yet.
Okay.
And so that's one of the things I'm trying to schedule, but they meet on the last, well, anyway, it was just the break and everything just got in the way.
Okay. And then, so one of the things that I noticed, well, at least I didn't notice, I don't think I couldn't find it. So the tracks that were put aside when we do the clustering for land preservation, switching gears, sorry.
That's okay.
Is there anywhere that we have information about those tracks and maintenance of those tracks and who is responsible, and it's recorded on people's properties if it's theirs, or if they have a homeowners association type thing, that we make sure they know that that's actually theirs, not the city's?
Exactly. And one of the things I remember recall when we did this discussion was a really importance that we placed upon making sure that those tracks were either held in an undivided interest among all the homeowners, so they all had a vested interest to make sure that open space, or some other mechanism. Maybe there's an agency out there that accepts these tracks and responsibility for them. I think generally you're going to see homeowners associations being responsible for these areas.
But we got that in code somewhere?
And it is in the code, yes, indeed.
Okay.
Yes.
So I've ran into that over the years, that even where I live, we're said, no, it's ours, no, it's not, it's the city's, and they can't figure it out. So.
Yeah, and usually they contact the city and we say it's yours.
Right, yeah. Okay, I just want to make sure that was covered, because we might have a bit more of those going forward, which would be a good thing. Those are my questions. Oh, now you have a question. Councilmember McAuliffe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want you to expand a little bit upon H, which says amend Title 11 procedures for plan and code amendment interactions between board and commissions. Could you just expand on it a little bit? I've looked and I just don't seem to find it here.
That's on pages, it's in the draft ordinance, and is on pages, hold on, let me make sure I get this. Council pages 35 through 38. That's basically where the current regulations have a mechanism for how the city and its advisory boards and the council eventually will review different elements of the comprehensive plan.
So I guess my question is kind of going back again, the interactions between the boards and commissions.
Yes.
How does that actually work in Title 11?
And what we wanted to do here is we wanted to add this consultation process, as well as in some areas we want to have the board or commission provide a recommendation. And essentially what we have is we have the ability for the planning commission, let's say they have something that they really want to get some information on from one of the other boards, they have this consultation process they can implement. And it's intended to be, somewhat less formal, so that we don't have a lot of big people around a whole big table area. As well as, of course, the idea is that we want to have the planning commission have the ability to get that expertise from another board or commission. That's really important.
I think so too. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, I think everybody's had their questions answered. Are we ready to make a motion? Deputy Mayor.
I recommend we adopt the recommended 2019 housekeeping code amendments in the proposed ordinance.
Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilmember McNeil. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, go ahead, place your vote. We're not blinking, clerk. There we are. You need two more. Whoever's blinking, hit your. There you go. The amendments passed unanimously. We are going to take a break before we dive into the next one. I think it's going to push us past 8. So we'll go to break, and we'll be back at 8:10. All right, Bothell City Council is back from break, and we are on to new business AB 19-135 Lot A purchase and sale agreement negotiations. I believe, no? Oh, hi. Sorry.
What's her name?
I'm trying to remember if it's Jean or Jeannie. You're not alone, though. At least feel that. Miss Ash, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. As you heard earlier during public comment, that we are in the midst of a negotiation of a purchase and sale agreement for Lot A. And I am here this evening to ask you to authorize the city manager to continue the negotiations and to sign a purchase and sale agreement. Just as a reminder, as you know, we launched the marketing of Lot A this past April 15th, and we held it open for 6 weeks. And at the end of 6 weeks, we got 2 offers, neither of them which were suitable for the city. So we, shortly thereafter, entered into a conversation with Imagine Housing and have been continuing this dialogue for the last several weeks. And just a few weeks ago, we received a letter of intent followed by a draft purchase and sale agreement. The timing of this, the reason why we've come to you and asked for you to grant the city manager the ability to continue negotiating this is that we're not quite there yet. We don't have we've gone through 2 reviews, and we'll probably go through about 2 more reviews, and we don't have a signed PSA yet. The timing of this is critical for Imagine Housing to get their funding. They will use this draft agenda bill, as well as the letter that was attached after the fact to your council packet, as proof that they have control of the site, and which is critical for getting funding. So should you grant the city manager approval to continue negotiation, we're anticipating that the purchase and sale agreement will not be substantially different than what you have in your packet. And some of kind of the highlights of that purchase and sale agreement is that the sale price of $750,000 reflects the council's goals, and the terms support the development of a multifamily low-income housing project. Also, the property will be sold as is. There's no developer's agreement that will go along with this PSA. They will be, design, of course, will be approved by the Community Development Department according to the sub-area zone, which I believe is downtown, or neighborhood downtown. Thank you, what he said. So also too, the due diligence period on this PSA is 180 days. And this is a little bit longer than normal, that you would normally see. Once again, though, it's so that the Imagine Housing can hit all of the appropriate agencies and apply to all of the appropriate agencies for funding for this. And it takes time. Should they require it, they will, the PSA allows for an additional 180 days. Also, too, during the due diligence period, Imagine Housing will be exploring the opportunity to build a second access to that property, as well as putting a light at the intersection on 180th. And I think that really covers all of the high points of this purchase and sale agreement. Do you have any questions?
Councilmember McAuliffe.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very excited that we are having someone as Imagine Housing thinking about coming to the city. I think that's really important for our people to have this housing available to them. But I do have a question, and that is, you said there were 2 offers that were not suitable for the city. And when I'm going through this, I do not see what you meant by that.
So we received 2 offers. One of them actually came with no offer at all. It just said we'd be interested in working with the city. So we did not consider that an offer. And then the second offer was we actually received a letter of intent, an initial purchase and sale agreement, but the terms were such that we were not willing to negotiate on, and the what negotiation we were doing eventually dropped and exceeded the timelines.
And would you go over with me just one more time? You said that they have 180 days first to do due diligence.
The 180 days will do the normal due diligence, phase 1, phase 2 environmental, as well as applying for grants. I believe Megan mentioned 3 different agencies that she's applying to grants to. And then the third part is working with the Washington State Department of Transportation in working to get a second access onto that property as well as a light at the interchange there.
So this looks like if they have the first 180 days, that would be 6 months.
That's correct.
And then the second 180 days would be 1 year.
Correct.
For them to actually
Right.
confirm that they can move forward.
Right. And again, it's primarily due to negotiating with WashDOT and funding.
So I would hope that that's really a long timeline for me.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yes.
So I would hope that we at least adhere to that timeline and not grant further timelines. A year is pretty much what I think is a good offer or even a good timeline.
Thank you.
Yep. And then again, a light at 180th. I thought there was a light already at 180th.
If I got the street right.
Yeah, I don't think so. Because I go down 180th and there's a light there.
180 what street or corner is that?
180th?
So there's
a light.
There's currently currently on that property, you're only allowed right in and right out.
That's correct.
A light at that intersection would allow you to do right in, right out, and then left out.
Okay. I'll take a look at it. Thank you.
Councilmember Olson.
Thank you very much. I was very happy to see this come through after we saw those earlier proposals not meeting the snuff there. In our council packet, it was mentioning that it was 7:30 for it, and then I see in this
I apologize.
that it's saying 7:50 now,
It's
and that's just...
750. That's correct, 750.
Okay.
$750,000 is correct.
Okay, just a typo from the earlier one.
Yes,
so.
it is.
All right, well, good. That was all I had. Councilmember McAuliffe beat me to a couple other questions, so thank you.
Councilmember Agnew.
I don't have a whole lot of comments other than I am very excited about this project. It's long overdue. We're finally getting some affordable housing into the city of Bothell. I hope this is just the start. We need it with the price of housing. I don't know how kids can afford to buy a house when they come out of college. I really don't. And our seniors need it too. So I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to moving forward with this.
Thank
you. Councilmember Zorns.
Thank you. First, may I confirm, did you say this is for ages 55 and over? Okay, so that's going to modify the questions that I'm asking. One question, do you recall what the previous city leaders paid for Lot A?
All I know is that the previous offers that you were engaged in were a few years back was the offer then was, I think, $780,000.
No, when we purchased it, what did?
I don't recall. Actually, it wasn't a purchase. It was you acquired the property through, during construction.
For the straightening crossroads?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I have clarifying questions because I'm really very excited about this, but I want to be sensible. So.
I might have to ask the affordable housing experts in the room to help
well, I
out
keep
with
glancing her way. So how does Imagine Housing feel? Because we keep wanting to get a specialty grocer, a grocer here. And I'm concerned about support services that will support, because we want to encourage people to take the buses. And I don't know how many of them will be using bikes or scooters, but how much does Imagine Housing place on having support there for its tenants, whether it's mental health or grocery store? Is there a radius that you look at and you go, okay, this meets the demands? It does.
I'm going to say from the city perspective is that we're very excited about the project because it is right on the BRT line. It's across the street from the market. Childcare, and it's walking distance to downtown, and it's right next to a park. It's a really nice location.
So are you thinking across from Yakima Fruit Market?
Yes.
Okay, because it is down the road a little bit, and we'll have improved sidewalks, yes, which will be wonderful, but it's seasonal. So in December, is Imagine Housing, if we don't have that grocer that we're just all pining for?
Well, yes, we can't fit it on the site, but we actually, in order to apply for funding, we have to create a map of all the amenities within a certain radius, and they've actually included even ferry terminals this year, so wow, it's a very big map. Alan was actually finishing it up today. We could always send any part of it to you, but we're also, this property is a little unique to our normal senior communities because we're actually going to have a community minibus where we'll take folks to the grocery stores, 3 or 4 times a week. Perfect. And we do, for supportive services, we do have on-site support staff. They're case managers. They can do anything from basic needs, toilet paper, to finding a doctor.
Okay, are those people, is there somebody there 24/7, or is that just during business hours?
No, so we're not the deeply, supportive chronic mental health, kind of drug dependencies. We don't have any of that staff because that's not a set aside that we're taking for this particular development.
Okay. That's
it's usually, we have 9 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Okay, that's super helpful. Thank you. And then the other question is, because when I was out doorbelling, people heard me say all the time that Bothell needs to take care of its own, put on its life jacket on first, that we're not helping Seattle, Everett, Tacoma with their problems. They have to figure that out because Bothell has to take care of its own. So my question is, and please say yes, that you've got a plan in place, prioritizing the people of Bothell for this.
That's not a question just from you. We're hearing it in every city that's not Seattle.
Okay.
We have 15 existing properties throughout the East Side cities. So I promise you we hear this very often.
Oh, thank you.
Unfortunately, it's a fair housing issue through federal regulations. What we can do is promote and market within the city using any of the city administrative processes that you have, or marketing at community centers, and we'll work closely with the city on that.
Okay. So thank you for answering that question. One thought that came to my mind is that I was corrected to not use the word mobile home, but manufactured homes. We have some parks that are in really poor condition. And I could see a situation where those folks need to be moved out of that while parks are renovated. Have you anticipated that happening across the area or entertained that idea at all?
Well, we will now.
Okay. All right. And that's the sum total of my questions. Thank you very much.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is a fabulous opportunity to have this within our community, and being a part of ARCH and making sure that we have these projects available in our community is a fabulous opportunity. My question comes around the in and out access. Yes. And if WashDOT doesn't approve that, will the project still move forward?
I don't know.
Well, let's see. We really, really need a left out. And if you were going to live there, you would need a left out. We're already compromising not having a left in, which we've worked with the engineers, and it's just not a possibility. if we had to say today, we would probably say no, but that's with the consideration of the traffic engineers' concern for safety, thinking that people will take the left anyways, even if it's illegal. So I'm kind of weighing both of those things.
Okay, I asked that question because for some reason, if memory serves, there was a report or something on that intersection before about putting another intersection so close to it. I'm not sure where I heard that from, but I want to make sure that we have the greatest or best opportunity to have this project move forward, because I think it's a fabulous location. You speak about parks, and you're close to, while it might not be walking distance, you have the trail that gets you over to the senior center. Our seniors, we need to provide this opportunity within our community for our seniors. Seniors are living more in place than ever before. And I think that across the board, we're seeing that nationwide. So we need to find ways to provide these opportunities. This is a great location for it. If there's something that we need to do or look at, or voice our opinion on, I think it might be that intersection, because I think that we're going to hear people don't want another intersection so close to another intersection, which is going to cause more traffic gridlock. And how do you get through it? The bus services that are on that as well. So I'm hoping that you guys can pull this off. I think it's a great win-win for our community. So thank you.
City Manager, you had something to add?
I do. I just wanted to clarify that there's currently a three-way light at 180th and Bothell Way, and what they're seeking is just the fourth light. So it's not another intersection. It's just so that residents and visitors could get out and make a left. So it's the same intersection, just adding the fourth light.
Put the fourth light back up, basically. It was there before. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess I probably should have gone first with this question because we've talked about it so much, but I'm kind of curious why 55 and over, because we have a SHAG and it seems like most of our affordable housing is 55 and over. We're putting this on a BRT line, which is a commuter line. Is there a possibility of it being mixed generational housing? It's on a park. It seems like that would be great for kids too. I guess I'm trying to understand why we keep segregating communities. And it seems like for a vibrant community, you would want it to be mixed. And we don't have a lot of workforce housing in Bothell, and it seems like that's a need that we could meet here. And so I'm kind of curious, what are the possibilities?
So for affordable housing for folks 60% AMI and below, we only have two pots of funds. That's a 4% tax credit equity and a 9% tax credit equity. The 9% allows households all the way to 0% AMI, and the 4% is usually stuck at 100% at 60% AMI. And when we start, so the 4%, it's very complicated, but the 4% only gives you about 30% of the funding you need, whereas the 9% program provides 70% of the funding you need. So it's kind of this shuffling that we play. The first thing we do is we go to the funders and we say, what is the policy priorities for this year and next year? And they will say, seniors, families, homeless, there's a list. And seniors is always at the top. This site, because it's a little bit smaller and it has some other coastal restrictions, if right now we're having studios and ones and that fits 54 units, if we did family units, we might only be able to get 30 units. And that's just not financially feasible, even if you go up to 80% of area median income.
Okay, that answers my question. It makes me sad, but I understand.
Although, I will add, we are looking at, you have a whole bunch of sites that are city-owned, I believe just to the north, that are larger, and we're already starting to talk to our partners that can do the larger mixed use.
That makes me very happy. Thank you. And you answered my other question. So you said 54 units. And then I had a question for Jeannie. So it mentions the reduced sale price of $750, I guess it is, offset by another unbudgeted revenue that was received in the Biennium. Can you speak to that, what that unbudgeted revenue is?
I can.
Great.
So the fire department applied for some funding. It's a reimbursement for transport and EMS services provided to Medicaid folks. and there was a reimbursement mechanism they applied for and recovered a bunch of money from EMS and transport from 2017, and that program is going forward. So we've already received several $100,000 from that program this year, and that was unbudgeted.
I love it. That's great. Okay, thank you so much.
All right, we're ready for motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hit the button. There you go.
All right. I move that the Lot A purchase and sale agreement negotiation move forward, and that we adopt this into the 2019-2020 budget. And at the sale price of $750,000. Do you want me to read the whole thing?
There's that. So if you go down to page 63 of your packet, it's got the recommended action.
Oh, thank you.
There you go.
Okay. Oh, I move that we approve the draft purchase and sale agreement as presented and authorize the city manager to continue negotiation with Imagine Housing and sign a final purchase and sale agreement for Lot A in substantially the same form.
Second.
It's moved by Councilmember McAuliffe, second by Councilmember Agnew to approve the draft purchase and sale agreement was presented and authorize the city manager to continue negotiations with Imagine Housing and sign a final purchase and sale agreement for Lot A in substantially the same form. Is there any discussion on the motion? I just wanted to echo what Councilmember Agnew said. I feel the same way, that we've been talking about this a lot. This is a council goal, it's a community goal, it's an important aspect of our society that's basically unfortunately been missed for some time, and I really appreciate the city staff bringing this forward with working with Imagine Housing to see finally something that we can sink our to point at in our town that says, look, we tried to supply affordable housing. So thank you, and thank you. Anything, anybody else? Oh, Councilmember Zorns.
I just wanted to quickly add, I toured SHAG, and they have a mixed subsidized affordable housing and regular renting, and they said that their affordable housing is maxed out, and they've got a big waiting list, so I'm sure that a lot of people will appreciate this.
Anybody else want? Are we good? All right, place for vote. Excuse me, passes unanimously. And we are on to AB 19-136, resolution formalizing an intent to participate in a program to receive funds from the state to be used for affordable and supportive housing in accordance with House Bill 1406.
All
Oh,
right.
there you are. Mr. Bothell.
So this item follows the theme of the previous item. Bothell is eligible to participate in a program to receive funding from the state to be used for affordable housing. So I'm going to give you a quick program overview, and then I will follow it with a description of the implementation process and timeline. So during the 2019 state legislative session, lawmakers created a program to help cities and counties fund affordable housing. The program authorizes the state to share a portion of the sales tax that it already collects. So the program is funded from existing state revenues, and participation by cities does not increase the taxes collected in participating cities. The legislation allows for a fair amount of flexibility in how the funds can be spent by a city to provide affordable housing. Also, there is no cost to the cities to participate in the program except for those costs associated with administration of the affordable housing program by the city. So participation in the program by cities is optional, but it's a pretty good deal. Funding provided to cities is based on sales tax collections. The amount funded is 0.73% of a city's sales tax collections in the state's fiscal year 2019. Bothell is estimated to receive approximately $108,000 annually for 20 years if it participates in the program. So the amount that participating cities will receive will not change over the 20 years of the program. And some cities are eligible to double the funding amount, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. So as I noted earlier, the qualifying uses of the funds is defined somewhat broadly in the legislation, so cities have a lot of flexibility in how they spend the proceeds. The qualifying uses are acquiring, rehabilitating, or constructing affordable housing, operating and maintaining new affordable housing, and or rental assistance. The last one only applies to cities that are smaller than 100,000 people. Those benefiting from the programs must be at or below 60% of the area median income for the area. Currently for Bothell, that is at or below about $65,000 of income for a family of 4. Also, pooling of funds is acceptable per the legislation, so participating citizens can choose to pool their funding with other local jurisdictions or a housing authority, provided they execute an interlocal agreement and the funds are used for a qualifying purpose. And finally, the funding can be used to pay debt service on qualifying projects. Cities do not need to identify how they will use the funds until they start receiving the funds, which would occur approximately 90 days after it's implemented. So the program has a provision to double the proceeds for cities that have a qualifying local tax. It appears that this provision would primarily apply to cities with a qualifying local tax on the date that the legislation became effective, which was July 27th, 2019. But if a city can implement one of the 4 qualifying local taxes within a year, then it too can qualify to double the amount that it receives under the program. So the 4 qualifying local taxes are a voter-approved affordable housing property tax, and this would be a special levy. A voter-approved lid lift used exclusively for affordable housing. So this is the generic lid lift mechanism that's approved by voters specifically for affordable housing. The 3rd one is a voter-approved sales tax for housing. And the 4th option is a sales and use tax for chemical dependency and mental health. That one's not available to Bothell because both King County and Snohomish counties have already implemented that tax. And the first one to get to it is the only one that gets it. So each of the 3 options that are available to Bothell are voter approved. And if the city wanted to pursue any of these, they would need to go to voters on the spring ballot. If approved by a majority of the voters, the new tax would need to be fully implemented by July 28, 2020 to make the city eligible for the additional funding. So it's a really short timeline for a city that did not have a qualifying local tax when the law became effective. It should be noted that implementing any of the qualifying local taxes does increase the taxes paid within Bothell. In contrast, participation in the program at the standard funding value does not increase the taxes paid within Bothell. So the process to implement this program takes just 2 steps. First, the council would need to pass a resolution of intent to participate in the program by January 31st of 2020. And second, the council would need to approve an ordinance to levy the tax credit by July 27th, 2020. And if the city wanted to pursue a qualifying local tax, that would need to be fully implemented by July 28th, 2020. So there's a resolution of intent attached to this agenda item, and staff's recommendation is to approve the resolution of intent, taking the first step to implementing the program in Bothell. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions from council? Councilmember Zorns?
Quick, I guess I'm going to be working back. On the qualifying tax, the state doesn't match if the city does it.
No, it just makes you eligible to double the proceeds of their program, but there's no matching.
Okay, so So instead of, what was it, 108 is what we're expecting? So that if, I'm not advocating
It'd go to
this,
216.
So it would go to 216.
Yeah.
However, if we didn't do that, and 5 years down the road, a council could decide to create their own tax. They just wouldn't be eligible for that being doubled.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Let's see. That may be the only, and mental health is off the table, right? I think that's the sum total. Oh, would Arch be one of those candidates for pooling, where we could pool?
Yeah,
Yes,
the
I
legislation
see many
identifies
heads.
housing authorities. Yeah.
Okay.
So we would just need to have an interlocal agreement with them to lay out the terms of how they would spend that money and some of the other particulars.
Okay. And say as a city we wanted to manage those funds ourselves, does that would mean, I guess this is a question for Jennifer, off the top of your head, do we have a staff person who could just go ahead and start managing that, or is that, no, we don't? Okay. Well, that's good to know.
But it's an option for council. So when we go into the goal setting for 2020 and you look at things that you're interested in doing, if you're interested in your own affordable housing program, it can't be used for staff. It must be used, as you saw on a previous slide. So funding for staff would need to come from a different source, most likely the general fund.
Okay. But we could initially pool, and then down the road, can we shift? Are we allowed to shift and manage those funds ourselves? Like, say, 10 years, 5 years from now, we decide that.
It's whatever,
There's nothing that prohibits that.
it's whatever you decide with interlocal. So you could do it interlocal for 5 years with Arch and maybe one from Snohomish County, or you keep it local. That's all, those are policy choices for the council to consider.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember McAuliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my only one question is, while I really appreciate this House Bill 1406, I want to ask, does this increase property taxes at all for the people living in Bothell?
It does not, provided that there's the two rates, so provided that you go with the standard rate of 0.73, it does not. The state's actually funding it from sales tax.
Okay. So it does not increase our property taxes?
Correct.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
I don't know that I have a question. I was going to weigh in on the local taxes. I obviously affordable housing is a really important issue and one of our council goals, but we've passed 2 levies in 3 years, and I don't have an appetite to raise any taxes at this point, so I'm just going to weigh in and let that be known.
Councilmember Olson.
So it speaks of there's ongoing compliance requirements, and so it says the participating cities must report to the Department of Commerce annually. How involved are those?
Well, we haven't seen exactly what that report is, but I suspect it's like a number of reports that we already prepare that basically just say, what did you do with the money last year? You know, what kinds of programs did you fund with it, and that kind of thing. Generally, those things roll up into a larger report to the legislature about how the overall program is performing statewide and those kinds of things. So we wouldn't expect that it would be too onerous, and we do a number of them already.
All right. There's one other thing. So it sounds like that it was, if you choose to do the tax rate, you just can do up to the 108,000 to match what is basically the 0.073 matching.
That's not going to be true in all cases because you have property tax, you have special levies for property tax, which have a different mechanism to calculate them. The sales tax, you probably could. The maximum rate is significantly higher in that particular one than the amount that they're going to give you as a result of this program. There's no tie-in, though, between the value of the qualifying local tax and this. The legislation says if you have one, we'll double what we give you. Presumably, they're saying that this is, you've obviously made a statement in your community about the need for this. All of those taxes, it would be difficult to implement any of those taxes for a value less than the additional $108,000 that Bothell would get. Like the sales tax, if you were to implement the sales tax at its maximum rate, we'd get $1.5 million a year. And that's at 0.1% sales tax increase. So the property tax it's a special levy up to 50 cents per thousand. So it's huge. So.
But it is another tax, and
correct.
I do echo the other sentiments up here that we have been adding taxes lately, so I think the city is a bit, tax avoidance right now. So, so I think entering in the program is great, and taking that contributions from the state that's already being collected from everyone and being able to use it at our own discretion, I think is a good thing, and I'll be in support of that.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. I also echo those concerns about taxation. One of the things, in this, the 1406, if I'm not mistaken, because we heard this at the Regional Policy Committee, this is not in its current state imposing a new tax. We're going to get revenue from a tax that they're already paying. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so this is not like we're going to go impose new taxes on our citizens.
Absolutely not. The sales tax rate won't change in Bothell as a result of this. The state, it's really a state-funded program. The mechanism to calculate how much of it Bothell's going to get, all local cities are going to get, is based on sales tax collection, but it has nothing, it's not going to do anything with the sales taxes paid by people in Bothell.
Fabulous. So if we did nothing, we would not get this money, and this money probably would go to other jurisdictions. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's effectively free money.
Okay. And I believe in RPC, we have been hearing that this is part of the $110 million that King County and City of Seattle. City of Seattle is using theirs to merge their funding with King County to do the affordable housing homelessness initiative that they're talking about doing. Do you, have you been aware of that? Are you aware of that?
I've not been following that.
Okay, so just so that council knows what I've been hearing is that this is part of the where the funding source is coming from for King County and Seattle to create that housing, affordable housing mechanism. And part of the concern is that King County is putting in money into the funding that's coming to the city of Seattle, 50 million, or I think it's 50 or 60 million dollars. I'm not sure exactly how much it is, but that funding is coming from the same source, 1406, the same revenue source. But the county's putting in money also to match that. And the concern is where is that money, is that affordable housing money going to be taken from pots of money that would go to other cities, other municipalities? So I just wanted to bring that up while we're having this conversation. Well, I don't think this is another tax on our citizens, our community. I think this is what we go out and work so hard for regionally, is to bring those tax dollars back into our community. That's what this program is doing. I think we also just need to be aware of watching who's doing what and merging money from the county to ensure that the county's not taking other revenues that we could be using to help support programs like Arch or Imagine Housing. So, thank you.
Councilmember Agnew.
You know, my dad told me there's not a lot of things that are free. So free money is probably an oxymoron. I do agree that we should jump all over this. When that House bill went through, I was thinking the same thing, that it answers a question that we've all been having about affordable housing and how we can get it. I truly agree with the rest of the people on the dais that we've put out a levy before, and we've put out a couple of other things to the voters, and I don't want to see us try to increase their taxes. If we just authorize this, we're going to catch a couple $1 million over the next 20 years of free money, and I think we should do that.
I just have one quick question. Could we donate this money to, say, Arch or some other organization so the overhead on getting this revenue is as minimized as possible?
Well, I mean, donate's probably not the
donate or
word, but
contribute.
yeah, absolutely. You can
Okay.
enter into an interlocal agreement with a housing authority or a group of other cities and have them administer the money.
Or we could use it for our annual contribution that we normally do.
I think it has to, we could get a legal opinion on that, but my sense of it is that it would have to have a direct impact on actual affordable housing units, like I mean, that's something we could look into.
Okay.
But I think it needs to have a more direct relationship with actual affordable housing in the community.
In Bothell?
Correct.
Okay. And you said effectively free. I just want to clarify. Nobody said it was. We pay taxes. We don't understand where the money comes from. So that's just, it comes to the city instead of it just staying at the state. Okay. Is there a motion?
Approve the recommended action.
Second.
It's moved by Councilmember Agnew, second by Councilmember McNeil, to adopt the resolution of intent taking the first step in levying the tax credit, and discuss whether to ask staff to return to the council with the resolution to put a qualifying local tax to voters to, wow, I'll skip that second part, but you got the answer to that without voting on it. All right, so adopt resolution of intent. Is that what you guys meant when you said recommend action? Okay, and second, you're good? That's not what you thought you were seconding? Oh, okay. Is there any discussion on the motion? Oh, Councilmember McAuliffe.
Thank you, and I'm sorry, but I'm still a little unclear that we would go to the voters and ask them to approve of a housing property tax. Is that correct? Or we would go to the voters and ask them to lid lift for affordable, no? But
So-
I'm reading this, so I guess I'm just not,
So when there's a motion on the floor,
I can't.
in a second,
Ask a
yeah,
question?
we can ask questions. You could deliberate and say, I'm not going to vote yes on this because I'm confused or
I
whatever you'd like
am,
to say.
yes, I am. I'm sorry. Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, place your vote. One is blinking.
Can I say? Where? That's what I thought. I pressed it. I pressed it.
We're still waiting for buttons.
I pressed it. Oh, she reset it.
Do you need to reset?
No, we're good.
You need one more vote? Can you see whose it is? Passes six in the affirmative and Councilmember McAuliffe abstaining. And moving on to item number, actually, is there a motion to extend the meeting?
I move we extend the meeting to 9 o'clock. Oh, no, 9:15, 9:15.
Is that it? Because we have council conversations as well as another agenda item.
Fine, 9:30.
Is there a second? It's moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Zorns to extend the meeting until 9:30. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please your vote. Passes 6-1. Councilmember Agnew in the negative. Thank you, Councilmember Agnew. I'm right there with you in a minute. People don't stop having side conversations. All right, on to AB 19-137, quarterly update on progress towards council goals, second quarter of the 2019-20 biennium.
Good
City
evening.
Manager.
In the interest of time, I don't have a presentation this evening. This is a format that you've gotten used to. We did this for the first 2 years of the 17-18 budget. This is the 2019-2020. These are the strategic objectives that we're working on to accomplish your goals for the 2019-2020 time period. And you can see the scorecards that's attached, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions. Lost a little bit of my crew tonight, so I might not be able to, anything very specific to a department I may not be able to answer, but if you do have questions, I'm happy to try.
Deputy Mayor?
I don't have questions. I have praise. I wanted to point out that we haven't talked about it, but on page 121, staff have installed new pesticide and herbicide-free signage to communicate with park users, which also means we are pesticide and herbicide-free. So I think that's awesome, and I know that supports one of our 10 goals of sustainability. So I want to thank everybody who worked on that. It's a big deal to me. And then the other thing, which we haven't talked about, which I think is kind of a big deal, is that we now have a system for texting 911. And I feel like we're in like modern times now. It's amazing. So thanks also to whoever worked on that. I'm going to be including that in my newsletter because I think that's really important for citizens to know and residents. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Agnew? Chatty tonight.
Just wondering how we're doing with fire stations.
We're doing great. Next question?
That was it? Okay. Any other questions, comments? Councilmember, what's your name again?
Wilson.
Wilson. Kidding.
So there was a line item in here for reduced chemical fertilizer use for aesthetic applications. It was just saying that it's launching third quarter this year. How's that looking, or was there a little more?
So we'll be bringing this back for a staff presentation to talk a little bit about our program in parks and also in concert with Public Works. But as far as the aesthetics go, we've gone to more of a natural fertilizer. However, there's some debate in that community as to the benefits of natural versus synthetic. So we'll be bringing that back for a nice conversation with the council.
Great, look forward to it.
Councilmember McAuliffe.
Thank you, and I just want to compliment the staff and our city manager for being on schedule in so many of these goal-setting arenas. I do want to also call out that we have a volunteer and special event coordinator, Shelley Crow, who did I say the name right? Crow? Okay. And I'm really excited about her job to bring volunteers who are people in the community that want to support Bothell and its activities. I think the second one I want to comment on is I'm hoping when we have the living wall plants that have been removed, and we're going to do a new art design for our wall in City Hall, that we bring some of that information to the council just so that we can be briefed on it, because I think that's pretty important for the Arts Commission to do that for us. So that's just my comment there. I was really impressed with the police department doing their cops and clergy meeting. And I think on behalf of our people who live in Bothell and who have mental health issues and some homelessness, we can all be involved in helping them. So I thought that was something I would like to call out. And I'm just really impressed with different areas that have been addressed here. And, and I want to know when we would maybe get a briefing, and I think it's September 17th, on the plastic ban.
We had hoped for September 17th. I think we're going to be extending that for a little bit, but it's coming before the end of the year.
Right. And I know when we say plastic ban, does that mean how much and how little? So I hope that we can all have a good discussion on that, because I know how important it is to other council members as well. And I think that is, that's my comments. Thank you so much.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. Just had a couple to add. A praise for the Diversity Committee and all the hard work and dedication that's put to that to make the city of Bothell a welcoming community. So hats off to the city for doing that. Also, the meetings with the boards and commissions I feel was really, really good. And to continue that work between the council and the other boards, I think will be awesome in the future.
That's great. Thank you.
I think you heard from everybody. You're doing a great job. Appreciate it. Thank you. A lot of green. We'd like to see a lot of green. Kind of a side note, but I traveled through Oregon for a couple weeks there, and I was shocked by how little plastics they allow you to use in restaurants, grocery stores. Like, we're way behind the times on the West Coast or in Western Washington. Like 20 cents a bag for if you want a plastic bag. That's awesome. I brought mine. Anyways, all right. So I think that we did not need to take action. No. Okay. So now we're on to council conversations. I do have one item to discuss. I got an email from the Senior Center President, Executive Director, and she would like us to endorse the levy for the Senior Center or the North Shore NPRSA, let's leave it NPRSA. So I didn't respond. Well, I responded to her and said, let me ask the council, because the standard that we've done in the past, and I do think this is an important standard, is to say, no, we don't endorse other people's levies. I mean, we sort of do ours, but in general, in the past 8 years I've been here, we don't try to tell people how to vote. I mean, if you put your own city levy out there, you're obviously in support of it when you approve it to be put on a ballot, but we don't actually sit there and hurrah and do resolutions about how awesome it is. So, but this one's different. So this one, NPRSA, there's 3 council members on our council that's on that, as well as Kenmore, Woodinville, Snohomish County, and King County. So I didn't know where the council stood on whether or not we want to weigh in publicly, do a resolution, or I don't think we would do an ordinance over that. No, it'd just probably be a resolution. So before I responded to her, I wanted to get your guys' feedback. Councilmember Zorn.
My gut, in keeping things fair, because down the road I can see someone saying, but you endorsed, and working that line would be to encourage council members to endorse that levy on an individual basis. And I bet you get a pretty close to a clean sweep on it. But as a council as a whole, I'm not sure I'd want to go there just because of setting a precedent for other levies down the road.
Yeah,
that's just my 2 bits.
I think that's why we did it the way we did it so far, because it would be like every council meeting. or whatever, every election, we'd have somebody asking us to support a levy. So does anybody else want to give sentiment? Deputy Mayor?
I agree. I think it's important to be aware when you're setting precedents. So completely concur.
Well, it's 2 votes. We're not at a vote, sorry. That's not a vote, just discussing things.
I would concur also. We don't want to set the precedence of supporting and then have that come up in the future. I would say, however, that I feel that you've heard me speak up here often on the senior center, and I think it's important that we all lend our voice to the importance of the senior center within our community, keep ourselves out of trouble, OPMA violations, things like that we can get into when we have conversations out in the public or multiple council members are supporting something and how that can look. But I think it is important that we go out and I know my effort will be out talking to folks within the community, explaining, expressing what the need is, not necessarily a city's position, just what the center needs, and leave it up to the people to make the decision on whether or not they want to support it or not. But when it comes to our seniors and the services, you heard me say it many, many times, it's amazing what that center does, and I think that we all can play a part. That's all part of our community. So,
I'll adhere to the council's decision. I see it from both sides. We don't want to set a precedent as a council and back something that even is as innocent as this is. I will support them. I'll go out and they can put my name on it. I think what they're asking for is they're asking for a little help to maintain what they have. 20 years ago when we built this, the taxpayers built it, but through some fault of ours as politicians, nobody put any operating and maintenance money aside. So Woodinville and Bothell and Kenmore and King County and Snohomish County have been flipping the bill for that for the past 20 years. I think the levy, it's not asking a lot. I think it's asking for like $15, $20 on a $500,000 house. So it's not asking for a lot of money, but it's just asking for support. I think we need to lend their support. But I will agree and adhere to what the council wants.
Well, I guess I will weigh in on the idea that this is just critically important to our seniors. And I'm really concerned about raising any property taxes, since Bothell is one of the highest cities in their property tax, where we're at 14%. But I think individually, each of us would probably want to support this, so I think we should do it individually rather than as a council.
So I'll say I appreciate the just desire to stay neutral on matters outside of our city's boundaries, jurisdiction. So I think it sounds pretty clear across the board, but on both matters, and think that the North Shore Senior Center and the NPRSA is doing a lot of great work and helping a lot of great people. So I think I personally support it, and just in my time with Councilmember Agnew and Councilmember McNeil, I see him there, not pulling an Andy. Just that we see it firsthand and how important it is as a entity and a structure and building and everything that it is. So I think it's a worthy cause.
All right, we're done with that council conversation. There we go, Councilmember Agnew.
I'd like to bring up something. We got this pop-up dog park, and it's supposed to go away on the 15th. Why don't we try to extend it? If it's not going to have a financial impact on the city, why don't we extend it? Because it seems to be a fairly decent success. So I'm just throwing that out there.
I will just weigh in that I talked to Mr. Stroop earlier this evening because I have a very enthusiastic and addicted dog now to the dog park. And I guess that there is conversation of how can we, find a happy medium in between. So anyway, do you want to weigh in?
So yeah, we've heard a lot of positive comments about the park. One of the things that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention was that we are going to be starting the pedestrian bridge project at the park at Bothell Landing. And at this point, we're not really sure how those two can coexist, because that will create a lot of noise. That's where we're going to be staging. There's just a lot of different issues. And that's not, that it's not a positive thing. It's just that that's not our permanent site. It potentially could be a site, but it hasn't been determined yet. We've got a lot of feedback. We'll be bringing that back to the council in November when we're talking with about our pros. And so as far as extending it, I think we could extend it for possibly one more month and then look at potentially other sites, like City Hall, for example. We do have the 2 green areas out in front of City Hall, and we definitely could move it to City Hall if that was the desire of the council. But there would still be about a month period of time so that we could use the materials that we already are using down at the park at Bothell Landing and bring them up here to do that.
How durable are those materials? Like, how much more life would you say, how many more months they would work?
So the materials we use are used typically in farming, and they're used to hold cattle in place, so they're pretty durable.
Even big dogs?
Big dogs.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, I'm probably going to be a voice that says that's not exactly my image of the entrance to Bothell. It would be a pop-up dog park. While we all are concerned about how people enter our city and what they see, that's probably not one of my favorites. And I hear a lot of people kind of say, isn't there a better location that maybe people would still enjoy? I know that Wayne Land could not probably be the site. I know. But we have, well, how many parks do we have?
So we have 26 parks.
Oh my goodness, yes. So I think there should be a further discussion about where, rather than right there where people enter Bothell.
And there definitely will be that discussion.
Oh, good.
So the challenge is it has to be active space. If we're going to put a permanent site, it has to be active space. So we are somewhat limited.
So some parks can't have active space, is what you're saying, out of these 26 parks?
Correct. So it's based on how the park was funded.
Okay, sure. I understand that for Wayne particularly, yeah. But I don't know which out of that 26 we might even consider. So maybe that's something we should know.
So, I mean, just right off the top, I can tell you Blythe Park, the City Hall campus, Penn Park, Cedar Park, East Norway Hill. Those are all some options.
Thank you. I really appreciate that because I think that's important.
So I was a big proponent of the dog park. I'm excited to see us try the other locations to see how they work out and also give other residents opportunity to access the dog park. And I, as an architect, I completely agree with you. I hate being a victim of our own success, but that is a money lot, and it needs a fountain and placemaking, and a dog park isn't really that. So I agree with you, Councilmember McAuliffe. But again, I would love to see how, City Hall sounds like a great location. I know there's a synergy because we have so many apartments that are in this area, and having someplace close for them to walk to with their dogs is obviously really wanted and needed. So hopefully we can find a solution to that.
And I would just add that we've received over 500 responses to a survey that we did on the dog park, and that was in the first 2 weeks. So we actually have more now. We're going to present that data back to you in November when we come back for the study session on pros. So you'll get to see kind of what the community is saying, where they'd like to see a park. And it's not just King County. We also know that our
Poor forgotten Snohomish County.
Snohomish County has those needs as well.
They absolutely do, and we have to remember them. We have the one representative here who has to, step up for Snohomish County. Actually, I was going to bring up the conversation at Green Acres. I was there in my capacity, I guess, for both Bothell and the state, and I just wanted to let you all know that from my perspective, it was mainly a state issue in terms of wanting to change legislation. I did look up the Bothell Municipal Code on mobile home parks and relayed to them. Someone was asking about the most recent Kenmore action that was taken for their mobile home park protection. And in case you didn't know, they basically passed a 10-year moratorium on any redevelopment of mobile home parks within their city. So I don't know if that's something that we want to look at, but it's obviously protecting existing affordable housing. But what we have in our code, I think it's 12.40 or something, is any mobile home park, there's an overlay, and all zoning has to be changed through a comp plan update, which obviously, and the current owners can do that, but obviously it's a pretty laborious, long process, which is in effect a protection, but it's not nearly as protective as a moratorium on redevelopment. So I don't know if that's something that we want to look at as we look at affordable housing and what we can do as council to protect those existing housing stocks. Because mobile home parks, from what I remember, when Arch came to us and talked about our affordable housing stock, the only thing we were even halfway decent at was having mobile home parks. We really don't have any other type of affordable housing other than, I guess, now we have Shag and potentially another on Lot A. So I just wanted to let you all know that I was there and kind of researched a little bit of what our code's like and put out there what Kenmore's done recently.
So can I ask you to make sure that I'm tracking you? You're saying that Kenmore put a moratorium on mobile home parks being designated for other uses?
Yes.
Okay.
So no redevelopment for 10 years.
I would love to have that conversation of, this is hands off for 10 years. So, yeah. No, and I did not know that, and I think that's a great idea. So.
And the other thing that came up, and I'm terrible with numbers. I think I have dysnomia. But the other thing that came up that I will try to find and have the clerk send to everyone is the designations or the amounts for in the allowable income to still get tax, property tax. I don't know if it's what it's called, property tax exemption, I guess. Those numbers have changed, and I think it was at 40, and I think it's now 55 or something like that. So that's something to be aware of. The state is changing those numbers, and they're kind of hiking it up so that people can make a little bit more money and still get exemptions from property tax.
So, Deputy Mayor, tagging on to that conversation, interestingly would be, we heard that the assessed values go up on those properties. And if the assessed values go up on those properties, that would mean the rent would go up on those properties, correct? So maybe at the same time we're looking at those overlays and the protections, we can also look at, I hate to say the word rent control, but something that allows the parks like you just mentioned to fall under a different taxation so that they're not going to have to continually increase the cost of the site for those manufactured homes, because I think that what I'm hearing is part of the problem is the cost of the space is going up, which is increasing their rents specifically.
Yes, as well as, so there's the land underneath their units, which the park owns, and then there's also their units and what they're estimated to be worth as well, and that impacts in two ways their property tax levels. The problem, and Mr. Feigenbaum had some proposed legislation for the state, which would exempt them from increases, and I can see one really big problem there, which is that's major moolah. But maybe there's a compromise situation. I don't know that we can do anything like that, though, within the city of Bothell.
Yeah, no, maybe just having a conversation around it or what it looks like. But I know that I know that if it's affordable today and property values continue to rise and their property owners are continually being assessed at the higher values, they're going to need to raise their rents essentially to cover that. So it's unlike image housing where they create in perpetuity an affordable housing development. So.
Right. I mean, and obviously, it's cheaper to maintain affordable housing than to create new affordable housing, I would assume.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I just want to have because this is the time of year where I just slip into depression that summer is going. And I just want to thank our city for salvaging this summer, specifically the Parks Department, because you hear rockin' music in the park. The ABBA Fab blew the roof off. And then we had Shakespeare in the park, and we had stories what was the storyboards that kids could follow in the park? So you really salvaged a summer that was kind of on the mediocre side. So I really appreciate it. And then along the lines of summer, Councilmember McAuliffe, I pass on to the farmers market people to not lose heart. And, I really hope that next year is a bigger and better year for them. And if council members can help and encourage individually with them, just let us know.
And thank you very much. It's a really big job to bring a farmer's market to Bothell, but we're hoping to be downtown next year, which will make a big difference. We'd love to be downtown Bothell. I think we have a site, so that's encouraging. We started a little bit late, so all the markets kind of had people already, but we've done fairly well. I think we're going to end with a pretty good year and a lot, and we've learned a lot. Let me say that. But I also wanted to comment on our many emails from our citizens regarding Yakima Fruit Market. And I was really pleased with our city manager's letter to these people, her email to them, saying that we are working, engaged with Sound Transit in the city to ensure that the business needs for Yakima Fruit Market are met, and will help them articulate to Sound Transit some of their concerns. The Pogues are very concerned, and I know that this was just an initial reaction, but I think the people of the community have certainly sent us many emails regarding their wanting to save the market. So anytime that we can engage the community in some of this conversation as we see it unfolding, I'm sure that our city manager, Jennifer, will make sure that our people know and are engaged. And
Can I just add one thing? I just wanted to say, these are the most civil bunch of protesters I've ever come across. I have never gotten so many emails that were reasonable and kind and civil. Usually, they want to kill us, or, we're making money somehow. So I really appreciate that. It's much easier to ignore someone who's threatening your life than it is someone who's being kind.
That is correct. They have been very nice and very supportive. So I also wanted to say, I did bring up earlier, which I should have waited for council conversations, to our youth council that we are, that I am hoping to bring to council at the goal setting. But I also want to notice that there is leaders across the nation who want to hear from youth and want to engage them in city government and in government activities. And so when I bring this to you, I will also bring you some of the real reasons why across the country, the National League of Cities, Institute for Youth Education and Families, have created a framework to support cities as they work to promote youth civic engagement. So I'd love to share any of this and all of this with you, so let me know if you'd like to have some more information.
Can we get that from that report?
Yes, I'm happy to send it out to the entire council.
That'd be awesome. Thank you. Do you know what I'm sorry, I was just checking on my kids. Councilman McCall. So what's transpired, I guess, with the youth council conversations that you've been having?
So pretty much we have the student body president from Bothell High School and a couple other young teenagers that are from Bothell. We have a Canyon Park Middle School student as well who really want to help us and want their voice heard to this council to create a youth council. Another opportunity that we have is that some of the cities, and you'll see in this report how there's different kinds of councils for youth, but some of the cities have engaged their youth court with their youth council. So it's another opportunity for us at this point, as we are seeing a transition happen with the court itself, that these students might want to engage with the two together. So we have a lot of options out there, but if you were to look at what Bothell has for their youth, we probably have pretty much not, I want to say a big black hole, but we just don't have the activities that other cities have, and you'll see that in the report as well.
Do you know if the Y still, because my children participated in this, do you know if they still have youth in government out of the Y? Okay.
Yes, they do. Mm-hmm. But our Y is very small. You have to understand that. Some cities have boys and girls clubs. They have, lots of activities, swimming pools. We have none of that anymore. We've lost it all. So where do our youth go if they come into Bothell, if they come to the city to do something? That's a good question. And then the second thing is, if we have an activity, such as the 4th of July, the youth want to have a voice in what they want to have. Because if you think about our activities like that, we don't have what they want. It's a parade, and it's food trucks, and it's young, other people's things, but no teenage kind of activities. So they want a voice. They just want to say, when you're planning this event, think about us. We have a lot of wine tasting, beer, carnivals, we have a lot of other things, but they want to have a place to go. And that's what we're missing in Bothell. So if we give them a voice, then they can engage. And I think that's what they want.
So quick question, because right now when you say a place to go, are you referring to events? Because right now we don't have a brick and mortar place to really,
like
a community center. But are you thinking right now initially doing events that,
yes,
as a place to go?
They should be able to participate like in the park and recreational, and have a voice there. That would be helpful. Or any events that happen, yes, they'd like to sit at the table.
Thank you. I guess I can go. All right, we got 7 minutes, and I got to try to clear all this in 7 minutes. All right, I found my notes. I apologize to council for not having them prepared earlier, but I do want to give you an update on the charter review. But before I go into the charter review, at the next upcoming PIC meeting, they're going to start the process for legislative priorities early this session. So want to make sure that we have had a conversation around what our priorities will be at the city, and so that I can take those to PIC. They don't have to be this meeting, but they're going to start that conversation at the meeting on the 11th.
I think SCA uses the same lobbyist that we just executed a contract with.
Yep.
They do, don't they? Okay. But they'll know.
Okay. Well, just want to make sure. All right, so as far as the charter review is concerned, the King County Charter Review Commission recently requested input from SCA on a proposal that would consolidate 3 King County Charter Regional Committees. Those regional committees are the Regional Policy Committee, the Regional Water Quality Committee, and the Regional Transit Committee. And of those committees, members, 6 members sit on the regional policy, 6 members on the regional water, and 12 on the regional transit committee. The importance of that is that local city, municipality, local council members are sitting on these committees and representing from a city perspective, policies and things that are coming forward. And so in August, at the August 16th meeting, they asked for feedback. And what has happened, what transpired is they gave a draft position statement, and they wanted to get each of the cities' take on that draft position statement, and if we wanted to sign on to that draft position statement, and or if we want to make changes to those draft statements. The first draft was done August 1st, July 10th, and that draft is SCA, and I'm going to read what the actual draft language says in support. It says, SCA supports the structure of the regional committees as approved by the voters of King County Charter and value the role they play in ensuring cities and the county truly collaborate when making decisions on important regional issues. SCA members have serious concerns that consolidating the regional committees would limit the city participation in regional decision-making. SCA believes there is a significant value in having different perspectives from cities large and small and in different parts of the county brought to on the regional issues. SCA would welcome the opportunity to explore how the charter committees can best utilize to facilitate regional collaboration and communication between cities and county. So that was the draft that was written July 10th, and continuing to support having the cities on these committees. On August 1st, another one was issued, and this draft says, the King County Charter provides that 3 regional committees shall be established by ordinance to develop, recommend, and review regional policies and plans for consideration by the Metropolitan King County Council, 1 for transit, 1 for water quality, and 1 for other regional policies and plans. SCA supports the charter provisions for the city involvement in decision-making in regional policies and plans. SCA members believe that regional policies and plans adopted by the Metropolitan King County Council are stronger and more effective when cities are part of the decision-making process. It is crucial to have diverse perspectives from cities large and small in different parts of the county brought to bear on regional issues. So those are 2 different drafts. And I kind of wanted it, I know we can't vote on this, and correct me if I'm wrong, we can't vote on this, but we can, is there changes we want to make? Do we support taking a position on this from Bothell's perspective?
We can go down to council and see how people feel about the, do you want us to pick between the 2 drafts, or to say we're in support of both, or?
Are you supportive of both? It would be kind of listening to the other 37 cities around the table and kind of hearing where they're coming from. But is there any language that we think should be added? Anything that we think should be removed? Just kind of a general synopsis.
I know how to tell time. Thank you.
Well, I should have gone earlier, but.
You should probably make a motion.
I make a motion to extend the meeting to 9:35.
Ooh, I second.
All right, it's been moved, second made and moved, whatever, until 9:35. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, place your vote. Passes 5-2. Councilmember Agnew and myself in the negative. Not that your topic is not important, but I'd say I'd support either versions of those. I think it's important that cities do have a voice. I mean, that's why they were set up in the first place, is Seattle's got a very loud voice, and King County is the biggest county in the 3 states around us. So having the cities be able to come together as a group and be represented on regional boards, I think, is critical.
I concur.
Agreed.
I concur.
I like the second one a little bit better, but the general sentiment.
And let me thank you for your work on that.
A thumbs up all over the place.
What the mayor said.
Thank you. I will take those comments back to the PIC on the next meeting. I want to follow with that by saying that it's been an honor and a privilege to serve on as many committees as I have over the past 3.5 years. But I think it's time for me to kind of start thinking about stepping aside from some of these committees. And I would, in our council conversations, I'd like to start talking about who would like to try to step up and take on some of these committees. I think we have done a fabulous job over the past 3.5 years ensuring that Bothell's voice as a whole is heard regionally. And that's all due in part to every one of the council members sitting up here. So I unfortunately need to move some of my time to hopefully spend more time here locally within the city of Bothell. And so I just wanted other council members to, if they have committees they would like to take on next year, at least start having that conversation now. So.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Everybody wants to go. Is there a second?
Second.
Let's go. Moved by Councilmember McCullough, second by the Deputy Mayor. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please your vote. Raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Passes. Are you serious? Okay, there you go. Passes unanimously. We're adjourned.